Alright, okay. Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera to all the students, to the speaker for today webinar series, Puan Aidawati Zainal Abidin, to the my colleagues, Muhammad Saiful Alizan and Miss Akrisha. So today our webinar series 2 on EMT 760 dissertation, which entitled Quantitative Research, Why Numbers Matters. So before we start, let me remind you some matters during this webinar session. First, kindly off your microphone. Second, leave the question and answer to the end of the session, or you can put it in the chat box and the speaker will answer it at the end of the session. So the purpose of the webinar today is mainly to assist and give some guidance to the undergraduate and also to the postgraduate students of the Faculty of Architecture, Planning and Surveying, UITM. So we are very delightful and honored to be having with us today Puan Aidawati from Faculty of Computer Science and Statistical. So first, before we begin, I'm Dr. Hafiza Ismail, the moderator of today's webinar session. So before we start, let me brief some background of our speaker today. So Puan Aidawati Zainal Abidin received her BSc in Mathematics and Statistics from La Trobe University Australia and Masters in Applied Statistics from University Malaya Malaysia. She is currently a lecturer at the Faculty of Computer and Mathematical Sciences, University Technology Mara, Malaysia. She is also a certified SAS Enterprise Miner and certified Blue Desktop Specialist. She has more than 15 years of experience in teaching statistics and mathematics at diploma, degree and postgraduate levels, has solid fundamental background of statistics and mathematics, as well as on implementation of accurate statistical application in various areas such as in medical, business, engineering and sciences. Her field of specialization are in machine learning or data mining, statistical multivariate analysis, research methodology, statistical computing, as well as data visualization. So thank you, Aida, for this today webinar, continuation of the first webinar. So for this series 2, we are going to talk about the quantitative research, which in continuity of the webinar series 1. So over to you, Aida.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Dr. Fiza. Okay, before I start, okay, I just want to know whether have you all attend the first series or not?
There are some of the students who have attended. I think majority of the students here are AP725, which they are in the final stage of doing their dissertation for the final draft. I think mostly on the analysis part lah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, because I will still repeat something from last week just
Mm-mm.
to make sure that it's continuous, the continuity is there lah. Okay,
Mm.
so without further ado, I will start now. Okay, Assalamualaikum all and good morning and thank you very much for joining. Okay, I will share to you as much as possible that I can share. But of course, at the end of the session, you can always ask question lah. Probably what I'm telling you now, not what you have in mind for the question. So you can always reserve the question at the end of the webinar. Okay, so let's start. Okay, next cycle. Okay, so this is the outline for today. So basically, we are talking about. I'll talk about a little bit on research process because we have to start from the beginning. Okay, just some recap only because we already discussed this last week. Okay, and then going straight into quantitative research, and then how we conducting quantitative research, and reporting in terms of the graphics and what you need to report lah for the quantitative, and also the advantages and disadvantages of quantitative research. Okay, next. Okay, so this is the research design. Okay, you have opportunity, idea, innings, development, innovation, experience, creativity, and growth. So whatever you do in your research project, make sure that you have all these elements lah in your research project. So of course, the last part, the growth, is the best thing about doing research lah. Probably you struggle, but at the end of the research, you'll be satisfied with your research, and you see that you grown in knowledge and in person. Okay, next. Okay. So this is the research process. Okay, the research process basically is the same for all area. So you start with the research ideas, literature review, and some data collection. Okay, before data collection, of course, there is a planning, and after that, you start doing analysis. So that is the difference between quantitative and qualitative. Okay, because in terms of the analysis and the way you collect the data is different. So where is this is under research plan. If you go to the next slide, okay, okay. So after you decide, okay, on which plan to use, whether you are going for theoretical or method or interpretation or policy or application, okay, you have to decide whether you are going to use for qualitative research or quantitative research. So we touch a lot on qualitative research. So this week we are going to quantitative research. Okay, next. Okay, just to recap, okay, so when you talk about quantitative, it's more on deductive, okay, objective, of course, numbers. So that's why the title for the webinar is why numbers matters, because even though what you are going to research is not in numbers, for example, people's perception, people preference, that is not measured in numbers. You cannot measure in numbers, but you quantify and it become a quantitative. So as long, even though your research might sound like more qualitative, but because of the research design and because of the instrument that you are using, your research become a quantitative research. Okay, next. So this is some basic different, okay, between qualitative and quantitative research. So I think this one you can read because I already discussed this. Okay, can you go to the next slide, Saiful, on quantitative? Okay, so for quantitative research, okay, what is the important thing in quantitative research? It it is an objective analysis that quantifies data. So meaning that everything that you do is all it's not subjective anymore. When you are talking about qualitative, it's all very subjective. Perception very difficult. When talk about emotion, is very difficult. But when you're doing quantitative research, okay, you are transferring all this subjective thing into a objective. So that's mean when you design your instrument, you design your questionnaire, you must make sure that you are using an objective question. So you can see the difference of what is subjective and objective lah. Okay, and then use statistic. Of course, when you have a quantitative, then only you can use statistical analysis. Okay, if you're using qualitative, you cannot apply statistical analysis into your research. But if you're using quantitative, then only statistical analysis come in. So this is where if you're doing quantitative, okay, statistical background might help and might be useful for you in completing your research lah. Okay, usually it based on hypothesis, or of course every research have objective, okay, research question objective is all the same, but when it come to hypothesis, so only quantitative and research that has hypothesis is something that you can prove, okay, the statement that you can prove by using statistical analysis. So how do you prove whether your statement is correct or not? So of course by using an empirical evidence lah. When you have numbers, then it's easy for you to uh, prove your hypothesis. So data can be numerically, okay, measured accurately, or highly structured data collection method is required for quantitative. So meaning that now when we talk about qualitative, last time as I said to you, sample size does not need to be very large. Okay, but for quantitative research, you need to have a appropriate sample size. That means you have to really calculate how much, how many respondent that you need for your research. Okay, and it brings forth measurement data to formulate theory. So you get the data, and then from the data, either you prove your theory or you come up with another theory. So this is the quantitative research that we are looking into. Okay, next. Okay, so this is the difference, okay, how the approach and the goal. So we are look at the quantitative only. So when you're talking about quantitative, it's more on deductive. So I think I explained to you what is deductive last time kan. Deductive is means that when you have the conclusion, your conclusion is valid. Okay, you have the valid information for you to do the conclusion. That is deductive. Okay, it's very breadth, okay, because you cannot go into deep. Okay, unless for qualitative, of course you can go into deep because you can always ask. You ask one general question, you can ask another question to get deeper inside. But for quantitative, okay, it's always on the surface. Okay, so you, for example, you ask on the perception, so you cannot ask very detail. Okay, you say, let's say you say, what color do you like? I say red. Okay, if you said red, so I cannot ask any more question, and then I say, why do you like red? So it become a qualitative already. So for quantitative, it's not into depth, but it's very breadth. So you can, the scope of your research can be very wide, okay, but the deep of your research cannot be very the depth of the research cannot be very deep lah. Okay, so it's more on experimental or apa, causal, we call it causal, and random. Okay, you have a random, so you don't have any idea, so you just take the sample and then you get the random or not. It's not very purposeful because you're not going too deep. Okay, and then you're using surveys, okay, administrative clinical data. So there are two part lah when you talk about quantitative research. Okay, I think most of you from real estate, I think you are more into survey, kan, survey. If you are in engineering, for example medical, so they have some instrument that you use, not questionnaire but some instrument in the lab. Okay, that one is the clinical or administrative data or the laboratory data. So we are not going to talk about that. That is very straightforward lah. You take the weight machine, and then you apa, measure the weight. So it's very apa, very objective kan. You just you get the numbers right away. But when you talk about instrument, we are talking about surveys lah. Okay, and then of course you need statistical test and modeling lah for your data analysis. Okay, next. Okay. Oh, already talk about this already. Okay, sorry, terlupa nak cakap next tadi. Okay, this is the example inductive. I think you can look into this. If you are not sure what is inductive and deductive means. Okay, for example, inductive, you can see that the conclusion that you made will become a general conclusion. If you look at the deductive, meaning that when you get the conclusion, usually the conclusion is valid and very strong lah. Okay, next, Saiful. Okay, so for quantitative research, so for quantitative research, you are going to use a very structured tools. Okay, if you're in the lab, no problem because your machine is very structured already. Kan? You just need to calibrate. But if you're talking about questionnaire, so your questionnaire is an instrument, so your instrument must be very structured. How to make it structured? Of course, you have to apa, look at your objective again. So your question must be built, okay, based on your objective of your research. Okay, you cannot have another objective and then for research question you just want to ask, you simply ask question that you want to ask, not the question that you want to achieve your objective. So that is very wrong. So that's why you must have a very structured tools, okay, must be based on your objective or your research question. Okay, and then you must have a significant sample size that represent your population. Okay, because for quantitative research, this is very important, the sample size, and you must make sure that your sample size is the representative of your population. Okay, so if you get wrong sample size, then your measurement or your findings will not be accurate. Okay, and of course, if you talk about survey or questionnaire, it should be close-ended question. So you don't allow people to give their own opinion. Okay, because you are doing quantitative research. Okay, that if you ask for open, yes, you can. That's why we have a mixed method, kan? So you can still have, but that one it's not considered as a quantitative technique lah. Okay, and of course, you have to use a quantifiable data. Though something that you want to measure is not in numbers. Okay, for example, to observe people's preference to buy a property. Okay, their preference. So preference is cannot be measured in numerical. You cannot just ask what is your preference and they come up with the numbers. Okay, cannot. So what you can do is you have to have items, okay, that you can measure, and these items is a close-ended item that you can later quantify to make it a numbers. Okay, but of course, just one question is not enough lah to quantify. So usually when you want to quantify qualitative information, you need to have a few items that measuring the same thing. Then you calculate the average or the sum, or depends on your topic and area. Okay, some for example macam apa medical, they use sum. Okay, they have few items, instead of they use the mean, they use the sum. So it depends on your area of research. Okay, how are you going to quantify the components in your instrument? Okay, of course, quantitative research allow you to generalize the result. Okay, allow to generalize mean that if you have the information, this information you can conclude that your conclusion can be generalized into your population. For qualitative, okay, whatever conclusion that you have is only stick to that particular sample that you have. For example, you have a case study, so it's only applicable to that case study. But for quantitative, okay, the result that you have, you can generalize. For example, you want to find students difficulties during online, so you know that every student might have same problem, okay, during the ODL. So instead of you take every student, okay, to become the respondent of your sample, so you just take a few, okay, take from probably you take from a few students from social science background, a few students from engineering background, a few students from probably FSPU. Okay, so you collect all this information, but because your sample is already representative of your population, so you can assume that your conclusion can be generalized into different. So you can say in your statement, okay, you ITM student, okay, has some difficulties in the during ODL, so the problems that they face are what from your research. So you can generalize. If you cannot generalize means that you can only talk about your sample only, but you cannot talk about bigger population of your research. Okay, that is the generalization lah. So quantitative allow you to do that. Okay, next. Okay, so quantitative is very data oriented. Okay, it's very data oriented, and it has two types of data that you can consider. Either you go for primary quantitative research or you go for secondary. So secondary, I'm not going to talk a lot on secondary, because secondary means you take people's ready-made data. Okay, for example, you go to apa? You go to Ministry of any ministry, and you get the data from them, so that is a secondary, so that is not counted lah. So secondary data, the way you analyze, the way you clean up the data is different. So apa you spend your time more on the cleaning part of the data. But if you are going for primary, that means you are conducting your research. The research, you are collecting data yourself, you are using primary. So this is very crucial lah, in terms of how you're going to collect the data, what instrument that you want to collect the data. So what are the information that you require from the your respondent. So uh, in my talk today, I will talk more on the primary part lah. Okay, right, next. Okay, so these are the four types of quantitative research. So I'm not sure which one you are using lah. Okay, can you go to the next slide? Okay, the four types. Okay, the first one is descriptive. Okay, descriptive or survey lah. So that's mean you just survey and then you just inform, or you just explain the phenomenal or the phenomenon of what you have found, okay, from your data collection just now. So this is just a descriptive, or sometimes it's also called a survey research lah. And you can also have a correlational research, where you want to find relationship. For example, you want to find relationship between generation, okay, generation, and also preference of housing. Okay, so these are relationship. If you just describe, you just talk about any information that you gather, but correlation, you just want to find relationship between some of the variables. Okay, and next one will be causal. This one is upgrade lah. So the lower, okay, from descriptive to correlational to causal to experimental, so the research will become more powerful. So descriptive is not so powerful research. Okay, correlational, yes, you are still, you upgrade from descriptive from to correlational. If you have a causal comparative, so this is where you explain. Okay, the difference between correlational and causal is that correlational you just see the pattern or you can see the relationship, but for causal you actually can tell. Okay, for example, if I say, okay, if you study 5 hours, okay, most likely you will get B for your result. But if you study extra 1 hour, you might get A for your exam. Okay, so you can study the effect. So this is what we call causal comparative. So quantitative allow that. Okay, but if you go for correlational, you just want to see the relationship. Okay, when you talk about, okay, study time is associated with exam score. Okay, but if you don't do causal, meaning that you cannot relate, you cannot say that, okay, if I increase, I if study 2 hours more, what should I get, what would be the what would be my predictive score for my exam. So you cannot do that. So experimental is the highest level of all research area lah. Okay, experimental where you control. Okay, so in experimental, of course, the sample size is quite small, but you have to do the experiment lah. Okay, for example, you really take sample from different generation, and then you study. Okay, now they are adults. Okay, so you see until when the time come for them to buy house, and then you see whether they what type of a house they buy. Okay, for example, so you really have to, you really has, it's not just like, okay, which house do you prefer, it's not just something like that. You have to do the experiment until you get the result. So of course experimental research is the most powerful research, and usually experimental research will give you more accurate result. Okay, kalau kita kata duduk kat lab lah kan, if you go to the lab, you get the numbers, you use the machine, you get the information, then you get more accurate kan. Macam you kata you measure distance kan, you measure distance just by, okay, from point A to point B. So the apa, the measurement you use maybe, okay, I just walk and I see how many steps do I have to take to get to point B. Okay, that is one of the measurement. Okay, but if you do experiment, you can take one machine and you just calculate the distance, properly calculate the distance. So both are valid, both measuring the same thing, but which one is more reliable? So that is when it come to the instrument that you're using lah. Okay, next. So I talk more about descriptive. Okay, so for descriptive, okay, this one you just describe. Okay, provide systematic information. Okay, does not begin with hypothesis. So if you are doing descriptive statistic, you are not using any hypothesis, because you don't have any statement that you want to prove. Okay, you just want to describe. So don't need hypothesis. Of course, presentation is just in terms of tables, graphical, and probably summary of statistics. Okay, and then you can see the pattern. Okay, that is all lah for descriptive. For example, a description of how different generation have different preference on housing type. Okay, so you just describe. Okay, but you don't have any extra information about that. Okay, go for the correlation. Next slide. Okay, for correlational research, okay, now you extend the relationship. Okay, determine the extent of the relationship. How strong is the relationship? Okay, when you talk about, okay, people will choose the house. Okay, based on, first you say the price. Okay, you know that the price will be apa, the type of house that you buy is associated with your budget. Okay, it is associated with the location of the house. So these are the correlational things that you will discover in your research. So if you're doing this, that's mean you are doing correlational. So this one have hypothesis. You must have hypothesis. For example, you say, okay, price associated with uh, type of property that you will buy. Okay, so that is the hypothesis. So your job is to come out, okay, with the analysis or the information that you can support this hypothesis. Okay, sometimes it's also called considered as a descriptive research also, because it's not just is it not very powerful, because you can just see the relationship kan. Let's say you describe, you can describe apa, generation. Okay, you just do the distribution, and then you can see what type of house they buy. Okay, so when they buy the house, so you can see the relationship between these two. So it's sometimes correlational is also called is also considered as a descriptive research, meaning that the level of the research is not very uh, apa, very high lah. It's not very high compared to causal. Okay, study relationship between preference and type of house owned. Okay, so from the description you move into correlational. Okay, next. Okay, for causal, okay, you attempt to establish a cause effect. So cause effect ni, you know, when one variable change, what happened to the other variable. Okay, if you have the same type of house, but if you increase the price of the house, okay, what will be the decision? Okay, so if you can find this cause and effect, meaning that you are doing a causal comparative research. So this is a higher level of quantitative research lah. And then it require the dependent variable or target variable. For the other two, the one that I explained earlier, okay, descriptive and correlational, you don't need dependent variable or independent variable. So you can just see the relationship between any variables. You can see the relationship between independent, doesn't matter. But if you're doing causal, you must specify what is your target variable or your dependent variable. Okay, and what is your independent variable, and how your independent variable change to make a difference to your dependent variable. Okay, so sometimes you can have most common is one dependent, a few independent variables, but you can also have many dependent variables. Okay, and your independent variable. So that one is the that it involve a more complicated statistical analysis lah. For example, let's say you want to see your customer satisfaction, okay, based on certain factors. Okay, but instead of satisfaction only, you are looking at satisfaction and also loyalty. So now you have two dependent. You want to measure the satisfaction, and also you want to find to measure the loyalty. Okay, so you have two dependents, so it requires a more sophisticated analysis lah. Okay, effect of independent variable to the dependent variable are measured. Okay, and then the effect of location to decision on buying a property. So if you move, okay, let's say you know that apa, it move further away from the city center. So what will be the outcome? Okay, the target variable. For example, if you are looking at the price, okay, what will happen to the price? So if it's 10 kilometer away from the city, so the price of the house will go up by 10%. Sorry, go down by 10%. If it's further, let's say 30 kilometer from the city center, so probably the house price will be like 40% below than what the house in the city center. So if you can do that, that means you are doing a causal comparative. So depends on what you want to achieve lah in your research. Okay, next, experimental. Okay, for experimental, you establish cause effect relationship through experimentation. This one is different. Just now you just collect the data, then from the data that you have, you find the causal and effect. But this time for experimental, you really measure, okay, based on experiment. Okay, so you build the house, and then you try to, and then apa? Maksudnya you buat eksperimen lah. You really do the experiment. For example, ataupun you have to complete a project. Okay, there are few methods. Okay, kalau senang cakap macam mana? Okay, let's say the simple example that I can give you is probably teaching method. Okay, you are teaching. Okay, you have a traditional method and you have a traditional method, conventional kan, or you have a modern method. Okay, so you want to see the effect. So what you can do is, okay, one class you teach traditional, and another class you teach using the modern techniques, and then you compare. Okay, so that one will be probably cause and effect kan. But let's say you take the experiment, okay, you conduct the class, okay, let's say for the first half of the course, okay, you use the conventional, and then the second half of the course you teach the same student, okay, but you're using modern technique, and then you compare. So what you can see the difference. So this is an experiment lah. So you are experimenting your methods, okay, into the subject. Okay, so here you have the control group, you have the treatment group. So it's very proper, and of course it become an experimental result, and the result that you get from this kind of research is very impactful lah, and very accurate. So if you present this, okay, let's say you want to come up with a policy, okay, if you just use a cross sectional study, it might have you cannot apa convince. Okay, you cannot convince. Let's say you want to change the policy. If you want to change policy, if you just do a cross sectional study, maksudnya a one time study, just collect data one time, and then you present your result, and your result might not be accurate. So do you think that the ministry would like to take your idea and change the policy? No, right? But if you have an experimental research design, so you really experiment all the consequence, okay, all the factors, and then it's like you are building your own lab, okay, for your research. The result that you have might have an effect, or you can just use it as uh, to justify to the ministry that you need to change this. Okay, if you don't change this, this is what will happen. Okay, so this is very powerful lah. So hopefully one of you, if you are in the area of when you are working, okay, you have the fun. Of course, experimental research design requires quite big of fun lah, kan, sebab you nak buat eksperimen, you kena bayar, kan. So of course it is costly, but the result is very impactful lah. Okay, next, Saiful. Okay, next. Okay, so this one I already talked to you about primary quantitative research and secondary quantitative research. So this is basically I already explained, kan. Primary is you collect your data yourself, and secondary you get the data from outsource lah. Okay, so but I'm going to talk more on primary lah instead of secondary. Okay, next one. Okay, so first thing, okay, you need to know how you want to collect your sample. Okay, so you already know, you already have your in your mind, okay, what research type that you want to use. Are you going for causal? Are you going for just a descriptive? Are you going for just correlational research? Okay, but you need the sample. Okay, and how you're going to get the sample. So this is very important lah. Okay, so there are two types of data collection methods. Okay, first you are going for probability sampling. Second, you go for non-probability sampling. So this one is a word dia pun a bit statistical, kan, probability sampling and non-probability sampling. So what does it mean by probability? It means that everybody in your population have the same chance of being selected. So that is probability. That's why it's called probability. So everybody have the same chance, meaning that everybody has the same probability to be selected in your research. Okay. How do you can calculate, how can you calculate the probability if you do not know who are your population? Can, if you do not know your population, or at least you don't know how many in your population, you cannot use a probability sampling. If let's say you don't know who they are, but you have an idea, okay, we have around katalah in UiTM student ada berapa, katalah ada apa 30,000 students, okay, 30,000. So that is your population, even though you don't have the list of the name, okay, but you can consider that as a if you collect the sample, you can consider as a probability sampling, because at least you know the probability for each student to be selected. Okay, so some of the probability sampling can use is random sampling. Random means you just pick lah anyone from that population. Or systematic sampling. Systematic is an upgrade of the random sampling, but it is more systematic lah. For example, you don't take like students at the same crowd. So let's say you go to FSPU, you just take 10 students. You go to the next faculty, take another 10. This is a random, but it's more systematic. Here I said sampling frame required. Sampling frame is the population lah. If you don't have the list of the student's name, it's okay, as long as you know how many. For example, I want to study on effect of diabetic, okay, to some other complication disease, for example lah, kan. But I don't have the list of the diabetic person. But the only thing I know is I have the percentage of the population that have diabetic. So that is enough for you to come to conduct a probability sampling. So you can just take, because you know already how many of the Malaysian are diabetic. Okay, so you can take that as your population. Okay, so non-probability sampling is something that you cannot have your population. For example, you want to study apa satisfaction of the customers buying product online. Okay, buying product online, and you know that people buying online, you do not know where they come from and who they are, and then how many of them. Okay, so in this kind of situation, definitely you cannot get the population. You have no idea who is in your population. So if this is the case, then definitely probability sampling might not be appropriate. So you have to go for non-probability sampling. So non-probability sampling, it doesn't say that non-probability sampling is not powerful enough, but if you take the correct sample, if you get the apa, if you like diverse the way you blast your your questionnaire, then you might have a good sample also. Okay, so under non-property sampling, you can go for convenient mean, let's say you want to collect the data, you go to uh, any park, okay, whoever is there, okay, because they are there, so you take them as a sample. So that is a convenience lah. So convenient is the most widely used, okay, by researcher, because they don't have time, they don't have enough money, so they just go to one place and then just collect the sample. But in my life, if you do use this, okay, your finding might not be accurate unless you can justify that wherever you go, okay, you will get the same information. Okay, you will get whatever people, let's say you go to the park and then this people give you some uh, uh feedback, and you can show that this feedback, if you go to another park, it will be the same. Okay, then if you don't have that, if you that that means there is no problem lah. Wherever you go, you can still get the same information. So convenience sampling is enough already. But if you think that if you go to Shah Alam, okay, you go to the park in Shah Alam, you see you will get different. The respondent that you will get, okay, the information from the respondent might be different if you go to Kuala Selangor, for example. Okay, if you think that this might affect your result, so convenient will not be appropriate. So you might use the consecutive sampling ke, sorry, not consecutive, like quota sampling ke, ataupun judgmental sampling lah. So where you have the characteristic already. Okay, I want, okay, for example, quota I want your population is all the customer in Selangor. Okay, but I want 10% of my respondent must come from the city area. Sorry, 10% pula, 50%, more half-half lah, katalah 50% of the sample must come from from the urban area, and 50% must come from the uh, s- rural area. So you already have that quota. So when you have that quota, because you know the distribution of the Selangor, katalah Selangor kita ada berapa ramai yang duduk kat urban, okay, how many lives in the suburban. So with this information, okay, you can get the idea lah, okay, how many of the respondent must come from the rural, how many respondent must come from the urban. So then you can have a sample which will be representative of your population, because sample in quantitative research is very, very, very important. You cannot just take any sample for your research. Okay, unless your research is memang out of the sky lah kan. Any research that you are doing, okay, you can do. But if your research is, especially when your research is very specific, okay, so it's very specific, then you have to have target population. Your target population and your target respondent must be accurate lah. Then only you can get a accurate result. Okay, next. Okay, so survey research is the most. So I'm thinking about all the students here are using, most of you are using survey research. Okay, so this is most fundamental. Okay, you ask respondent multiple survey question. Okay, usually when you do survey research ni, it's not something that you can measure directly lah. For example, even age also you cannot measure directly, because if you just put age, ask them to write down, probably they might not want to write, kan, they won't answer. So that's why you change from age, daripada apa, they put their age, you just put the age category, so that people be more comfortable to answer. Okay, so it's a very structured and objective. Of course, you have a few questions, and make sure that all the question that you ask can answer your research question. Close-ended question for easy analysis. Yeah, can be conducted face-to-face, email, using self-administered questionnaire lah. Okay, so this is what you do in survey research. Okay, next. Okay, okay, two types of survey research. Okay, you can do either one of these. One, you can choose for cross-sectional. So cross-sectional means that you collect the data at one time only. Okay, so this kind of survey, you don't need their names lah, kan, you don't need to know who answer your first survey tadi. This is a cross sectional. So cross sectional is mainly mostly used lah by researcher. Okay, just take data one time. Okay, they collect the data, go for once only. Okay, but if you go for longitudinal survey, this allow you for comparison or to observe the change. Okay, for example, okay, now you are collecting the data, and then let's say before the policy come in lah, before the rules and regulation, you know that ministry is going to announce some regulation. Okay, for example macam kereta lah kot kan, kereta recently they just uh, with the SST kan. So you before the SST was start again, so I think in July kot dia akan start balik SST. Okay, so before that you do the survey. Okay, so you ask lah, okay, what they want to buy car, which car do you prefer. Then after the implementation of SST balik, so you ask again. Okay, ask again. But now with the SST, probably the people preference might have changed kan, sebab sekarang the SST dah start balik, so the price of the car might increase. So kalau dulu-dulu they aim for Honda, so probably now they cannot aim for Honda, they have to go for Proton, for example, because Proton is cheaper than Honda, for example lah. So you can see the difference, okay, you can see the change. So when you have the change, that is where you use the longitudinal survey. You measure across various time. Okay, for example, before SST and after SST. So you can see the difference. And if you want it to be more valid, okay, your research, you take the same person, okay, the same respondent, okay, you ask them before SST and you ask them again after the SST. This one is more valid because you are asking the same person. If you ask, just take one group of respondent before SST and one group respondent after SST, you might not get the whole picture lah, kan? Because you are probably they don't change, they don't care. The second time that you survey tu, the respondent you get all rich people, so they don't care that whether there is a SST ke no SST ke, they still want to buy expensive car, for example. So that might affect. But if you take the same respondent, okay, then you can see the change lah. Yang paling senang sekali, if I give you example, weight loss lah kan. Before the program, you measure the weight. After the program, you measure the weight again. So you can see the difference of the weight, okay, after the program. Is the program effective or not? So this is where you use the longitudinal survey. So longitudinal survey, something can be take 2 times, can sometimes want to follow up 5 times, depends. Okay, so of course longitudinal survey is more accurate lah than cross sectional, and it is used to observe the change of behavior, or to observe the behavior change. Okay, then you use the longitudinal survey. Okay, next. Okay, when it comes to measurement, okay, now you know already how you're going to collect the data. Are you going for property sampling or non-property sampling? So now you want to go for the measurement. What you want to measure. So what you want to measure is one thing. How you're going to measure and what kind of the information that require. Okay, for example, you want to measure the age. So how you going to measure the age? Are you going to use the numerical type of data, or you going to go for categorical? So categorical tu macam you put age group lah. So is that how you're going to collect data? So this is called a measurement. Okay, so this is very fundamental in research. Okay, especially in business research. Okay, must correctly measure the concept we are examining lah. So everything that you measure must be again back to your objective and back to your purpose of your research. Okay, without appropriate measurement, it's very difficult, impossible to comment on the behavior of phenomenon. Interpretation and conclusion will be misleading or inaccurate if you don't have a proper measurement. For example, you want to measure exam, okay, measure achievement. Okay, you use exam to measure achievement. Okay, so you want the purpose of your study is to measure the achievement of the student, but you are using the exam score as your measurement. Okay, so valid lah kan? Exam and achievement quite kuih. Okay, and then you want to measure the progress of sales performance. You look at the monthly sales. You want to see whether your salesperson have increased or not in their production ke, ataupun have your sales increase ke. So you look at the monthly sale and you can see the performance or the progress of your sales. Okay, you want to measure the quality of an ice cream. Good, tasty. Okay, you this is what we call a subconscious measure lah. So this one is very subjective kan. For example, quality of an ice cream, okay, it's either good or tasty. So how do you define good? Okay, if you ask me, okay, how does okay, you want to test whether your product Okay, you have a new product, so you want the customer to comment lah. Okay, what do you think of the taste of the ice cream of our new product? And then your responder will say, okay, it's tasty. And you go to another customer, they will say that it's good. So how do you differentiate these two? So this is very a bit difficult lah when you go for quantitative analysis, because you need to quantify. So how are you going to measure? Let's say you put a scale, uh, apa apa good, not good. Okay, macam mana? Strong, very good, good, neutral, or not
Agree,
good.
disagree.
Agree, disagree kan.
Ah,
Kan, very very subjective lah. So maybe my level of agree is not the same level as your agree. So when I say strongly agree, for your level is only agree kan. So these are the things that we cannot capture lah. These are what you call is subconscious measures. Okay, subconscious measure is something that you really cannot measure, but you have to do it because you're using quantitative. Okay, attitude also very difficult. Okay, perception, people perception. These are all the subconscious measures. And most of the time, people are doing instrument, especially in social science ke, memang dia akan guna subconscious measures lah. So you have to be very careful. And then it's not the answer that you have to think about. You have to think about the question pula. And question pun is very tricky ke. What question you want to ask? Okay, to measure this. Okay, so the apa ni? Scale of measurement, okay, allows comparison lah, of course. Okay, you have that when you scale the scale of agreement, because it's quantitative, you quantify it, so then you allow for comparison. So next, okay, this is very important. If you are using quantitative, you must know your level of measurement. Very hard. Okay, you must know this. If you don't know this, then your analysis all will be wrong. Okay, so this is the basic concept that I always stress to my students. Okay, this is very important. Okay, if you are using a nominal type of measurement, so what kind of analysis that you have to do? So that's why you have to understand first the level. Dia tak banyak, only four. There are four level of measurement that you need to know. Either nominal, ordinal, interval or ratio. Tapi interval and ratio not so much different lah. So nominal and ordinal is two distinguished level of measurement. So first one is nominal kan. Nominal is come from the word name lah. So it just indicate the categories. Numbers only used as labels. For example, you just want to male, you bagi code 1. Female, you bagi code number 2. But that number is not meaningful. Kan? The information that you want is actually is there male or female. So this is a nominal lah. So for example, another example is race, Malay, Chinese, Indian, others. So this one is you give the number, but this number does not mean anything. You cannot even calculate the average of this. Okay, let's say you collect all the information, so you get a few ones, a few twos, you calculate the average. Cannot. So nominal, you must know that if you are using a nominal type of measurement, you cannot calculate mean. Median pun tak boleh. Median also you cannot calculate. So what you can do is you calculate the mode je. Which group uh, from all of the respondent, okay, which group is the mode, okay, atau the highest frequency. So I have a more Malay respondents than others. So that is how you describe your nominal. Okay, does not represent order or distance. Let's say I change the order of the race, will not make any difference. Okay, you can just change. You can put Malay down. You can put, tapi cuma others tu lah. Others tu usually we put at the back lah kan. Pelik lah if the others you put the front kan. But anyway, the way you arrange, okay, does not matter. Okay, this is nominal. So next, okay, this is ordinal. So for ordinal, okay, this is still a category, but the category you can level. Okay, you can arrange. Okay, that's why it's called ordinal. It's come from the word order lah. So for example, you go to academic qualification. Okay, you can have diploma and below, degree, masters, PhD. So you could give a code. But in this case, you cannot rearrange the category. Okay, just like that, because there is a level. So you know that diploma and below is lower than degree, and you know that degree is lower than masters. You know masters is lower than PhD. So these are the ordered category that when you put in your question, it must be in order lah. So this kind of data, okay, upgrade sikit lah from mode tadi kita boleh increase to median. So because you can arrange, you can find the median lah. So where is the middle? okay, 50%, when you talk about the median, is like half, right? You split the data into half. So let's say 50% of your respondents have degree and above. Okay, so that is your median lah. So that's how you interpret your information that you get from your data. Okay, so ordinal is actually categories with logical or ordered, okay, permit measurement of degree. So they just permit like comparison lah, which one is less, which one is more, that's it. Okay, implies ranking. Okay, does not say anything about the distance. So you don't know whether diploma and degree, what's the distance, you don't know. Okay, katalah diploma and degree, the distance might not be the same as degree and master. So master and PhD probably different. So you cannot say that they have the same distance. Okay, ranks are not interchangeable. So you cannot change the rank because they are in order. Okay, so for example, rating of product, okay, question, level of preference. Okay, for example, this one, popularity. Okay, this one is another ranking. This is another way that you can ask question. Okay, yang tadi ni you just put, this one what we call just one time lah. So you just choose. Okay, this one. Okay, let's say on the basis or on the on what basis do you select an electronic product, for example? So please rank the following based on your preference. So you have property, brand name, image. So you ask them to put the numbers. So number one means the apa, the product that you like most. Okay, five probably the product that don't like you don't like lah. So these are also called an ordinal. Okay, so if you can look at the question, the way you design the question, this is one of the question that you can ask lah. For example, okay, if you ask, okay, what make you, what on what basis do you decide to buy a property? So you list down here lah. So they will do the ranking. Okay, which one? Okay, location first, price number two, number three is the size of the house, for example. So if you have this, okay, then later on you can see you can get the average for all the respondent, and then you can summarize, okay, what will be the main uh, basis that people will look into when they want to buy the house. So if you are the apa, developer, so you know lah how to target the market, because the people that you survey, okay, the size of the house is very important. So that is the first thing that you have to cater first, so that you can have apa, more buyers lah for your product, right? Okay, next the interval. Interval is already numerical data. Okay, is also known as rating scale. Assume equidistant points between each element. So meaning that uh, if you say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tu, you assume that the distance is the same. Okay, so no absolute meaningful 0 point. Okay, meaning that if you take exam, okay, you get 0 marks. That's mean they take the exam, but their score is zero. So zero is actually the value lah. So this is interval. Okay, I will show you later what is the difference between the other one ratio. Okay, can use to calculate mean and deviation. So if you have this kind of measurement level, you can up your analysis. You can use the mean to represent. Okay, to represent your data. Okay, for example, okay, rate the following brands of detergent soap in their ability to clean clothes on a scale of 1 to 7. So you have here, so you ada punya bulat tu lari pula. Okay, you have okay, attack, dynamo, breeze. So they have to rate. Okay, so you assume that one and two, two and three and four, they have a equal distance. Okay, the level is equal distance. So this is interval. And next one is the highest level of measurement. Next slide. Okay, this is ratio. So ratio, you can see the difference. Okay, let's say I say 10, say exam score, katalah exam score, kata 10 dengan apa, sorry, exam score pula, kata weight 50 and 100. So you can imagine lah, okay, if you're 100 kilogram, you're 50 kilogram, what is the difference? So you can always imagine. So this one is possess all properties of nominal, ordinal, and interval. Okay, absolute meaningful 0 point. Absolute meaningful 0 point ni means that if the value is zero for ratio, it means that it does not exist. For example, if you take height, okay, if you take the height, if you get zero, that means you don't exist lah, kan? Because your height is zero, kan? Ataupun distance. If you say distance is zero, from point A to point B, the distance is zero. So meaning that point A is actually point B, kan? There is no such thing. So that is called what we call a ratio. This is the highest level of measurement. So if you can get all ratio punya measurement memang very good lah kan, tapi but it's very difficult lah. Usually ratio ni yang paling senang, you go for machine lah kan. If you have machinery, you measure something, then you get of course you will get ratio value. Okay, can use to calculate mean standard deviation juga. Okay, for example you can see the difference. Okay, differences among all four basic scale measurement in 100 meter race. So how can I make this 100 meter race into a nominal measurement, into a ordinal, into an interval, or into a ratio? So if I want to make it into nominal, so from this, okay, I have runner number 12, runner number 8, runner number 1. Okay, so this is nominal lah, because it's just a name of the runner, kan? Which runner? Runner number 8. But you cannot do anything. You cannot measure anything about uh, numbers to the runner, kan? Okay, and then ordinal, rank order of winner. So I have second place, first place, third place. So you have the ranking there. So this is ordinal. So it's just a placing. Okay, interval, performance to rating. Okay, let's say somebody there's a jury. Okay, they will give you point lah. So you get 6 point, 8 point, and 9 point. So this is interval. Okay, if you take the second, okay, time to finish in second, this is ratio already. Okay, this is a ratio. So you can see the difference. Okay, the same things that you want to measure. Okay, you want to measure about the race. Okay, so how you going to make it nominal? How you going to make it ordinal, interval, and ratio? So of course you will see out of this. Okay, the the most meaningful measurement or observation that you can take is the ratio lah kan. So that's why ratio is the highest level of measurement that you can consider for your instrument. Okay, but it's not easy lah. You must have something, you have some instrument, the tools that you can use to measure this thing. Okay, for example, you want to measure weight, you must have a proper weight uh, apa weight scale. If you want to measure the height, you must have a proper height scale. Kan, semua tu benda you have to have. That's mean if you want to get a ratio, it's not very easy. But of course lah, all the difficulties come with the apa the degree of the analysis lah kan. Okay, so next one. Okay, enough of level measurement. Hopefully this one you have because every time you do your instrument, every time you want to do the analysis, that is the first thing that you know, you have to know first. If you don't know that, make sure that you revise on that one first, then you do the analysis. If not, if you don't understand the level of measurement, then don't do analysis, because you might get all the analysis wrong. Okay, so this is the advanced measurement technique. Okay, so usually you use instrument lah. Okay, so advanced measurement technique is you use in questionnaire. Okay, you have two, comparative skills and non-comparative skills. So I see the difference. So you might have you can use this as a basis to for you to design questionnaire, or if you already have your questionnaire, you cannot do anything. But if you are still in the stage of designing, okay, your instrument, okay, you can consider this. Okay, if you want to compare, so you can use a comparative scale. Okay, assign value in comparison to either item. So like this one. Okay, please rank the following brands of toothpaste based on your preference. So here you can see that you can rank Colgate, Systema, Dali, Fresh, and White and Sensodyne. So you have 1 to 5. So you are comparing this product to each other. Okay, you cannot put Dali and Systema 1 lah. Okay, you have to put 1 to 5. So that's mean you must have something that you like most. Okay, for example, I like to use Dali, so I put Dali as number 1. Okay, so when I put Dali as number 1 and put Systema at number 2, in other words, I'm saying that I prefer Dali to Systema, so I can compare. Okay, and you can compare your customer preference. So this is what we call comparative scale. For non-comparative scale, you can have something like this, meaning that in order for you to determine the preference, it does not involve other product ataupun other brand you can compare to. For example, okay, please rate the following toothpaste on the scale of 1 to 5. Very much dislike, dislike, until very much dislike. So when you, sorry, sorry lupa nak cakap. Tak ubah lagi. Okay. Okay. So this one, the number 2 table. You can see that I want to rate, okay, my preference based on each brand, but it nothing to do with the other brand. So when I uh, apa rate Colgate, I can put anything that I want. I say I can put like to all, because this is not a comparison. Okay, I just want to know, okay, whether they like this product or not. That's it. But if you want the customer to give you the preference and then at the same time compare with other product, so you have to use for comparative scale. So this is how you're going to represent. So let's say in your objective, okay, you have the let's say your objective is to find what is the most preferable toothpaste of the customer. So you might go for comparative. Yang ni boleh, but this one you cannot see clearly. Okay, if I say I like Colgate, does that mean I like Colgate more than Systema or not? Okay, you cannot see. That is a non-comparative scale. So based on your objective. Okay, if your objective want to compare, then you have to go when you design your instrument, you must go for the comparative scale. If you are not comparing anything, then you just use this kind of question. Okay, then you get the description of what they like. Okay, I have all these product in the market. Okay, these are products that people like, but I do not know which one they like the most. Okay, tak boleh. But if you have this kind of question, you know which one is the customer like, and you also know which one is the most preferable by the customer. So you can see the difference. So this is what is different in your instrument. So this is very important. That's why you must know what you want. Okay, what you want to achieve in your instrument. What are the information that you want from your respondent? The information that information you translate into the question. So the question must reflect what you want. Kalau if the question does not reflect what you want, then the information that you get, you cannot do anything. You cannot tell extra lah than what you are supposed to. Right? Okay, next one. Okay, these are all about questionnaire design lah. Okay, scaling technique I explain to you comparative and non-comparative. So under comparative, ada a few pula. You can go for paired comparison, you can go for rank order, you can go for constant sum, you can go for Q sort. So of course the most popular is these two lah, paired comparison or rank order. Constant sum ni sometimes I think probably you have seen lah. I will show later what it looks like. Okay, for non-comparative scale, you can go for continuous or you can go for itemized rating scale like Likert, semantic differential, staple. So this one, the one that I showed you just now tadi Likert lah. And Likert. So I will show you what is semantic differential pula. So how you design a question. Okay, and you want to use the non-comparative and you want to use semantic. I want to go for comparative. So which one do you want to use? Okay, so these are all the order. Okay, next. Okay, I'll explain to you on the paired. So how you going to use paired comparison. So respondent is presented with two objects at a time and asked to select one object or rate between the two objects based on the same criterion. So if you say paired comparison, meaning that you cannot compare more than one lah. Yang the one that I showed you just now, you can compare all 5 items kan. But this one, if you say paired comparison, you cannot compare uh, all together. So you have to pair by pair. For example, if you have 5 brand, okay, you want to know which brand of mobile phones that the students like to use. Okay, they mostly use lah kan. So you have Samsung, Apple, Huawei, Vivo, Sony. Okay, for example. So what you need to do is you need to compare Samsung and Apple, Samsung, Huawei, Samsung, Vivo, Samsung, Sony, because that's why it's called paired. Kan, you can only compare between two items at one time. So let's say you have 5 items, so you have 10 comparison lah kan. Kalau tengok kat sini ada 4 and then 6 here and then 6 here kan, you have 10 comparison. So you have to have a 10 question, okay, asking okay which one they prefer across all brands. So the difficulties if you're using this one is 5 brand, you have already 10 question. What if you have 10 brands kan, you have 10 brands, so kali berapa? 10 times 9, 90 divided by 2. So you have 45 questions just to get your pet comparison. So it's not very effective lah. So that is one more thing lah. When you design, even though it is very meaningful, but it's not practical. So it must be practical also. So questionnaire ni, if you want to develop the instrument, is very difficult. You have to think everything. Okay, semua benda you have to think. Okay, is it practical or not? If I put too many questions, then people don't like to answer because it will be burden for the question. If I ask less question, then I cannot get the information that I want. So how do you solve that? Okay, that one is up to the researcher lah. So you have to think. Okay, this one is just a method, but of course the final decision will be yours. Okay, next. Okay, so this is how you relate lah. If you have the pet comparison, so you can have something like this. Okay, you have Samsung. Okay, then you tick lah. Okay, this one is Samsung and Apple. So they like Apple. So Samsung and Huawei, they like Huawei, Vivo. So this is how you report. So I'm telling you here, if you're using that method, this is how you're going to do the analysis, and you can rank, okay, based on the numbers that you have here. So for example, kat sini, okay, Samsung compared to Apple, Samsung win. So this one is Samsung lah. You have to look for the column. So Samsung uh, win over Apple, and then Samsung also win over Huawei. Samsung win over Vivo. Samsung also win over Sony. So here you have, for Samsung, you have four preference. So the rank for this customer is, for this respondent, is one for Samsung, two for Huawei, three for Apple, four for Vivo, and five for Sony. So you have to do that. If you have that, then of course there is certain type of analysis that you can do to get your information. Okay, so this one, you don't understand this, is okay. I just give you example. Of course, you have to consult, kena baca lah. You have to read on how to interpret or how to analyze that kind of data. And then one thing lagi satu is very, when you do the question, it's very nice. You just do the question. Oh, I want this, I want this. But when it comes to analysis, then how to analyze this. I make this question, but I don't know how to analyze that. That one also you have to think about. After you get the information, how are you going to analyze it? How are you going to get the information that you want? Okay, what information? How do you want to ask? Okay, is it practical or it's not? Or is it easier for me to analyze or not if I get the information? So that's the thing that you need to consider. Okay, next, another comparative scale that you can consider. Okay, this is a rank order. So rank order, the one that I show you. Okay, this one a bit if you have a lot of brand, it's okay because we just need to rank from one to. But the only difficulty for the respondent is that if they cannot choose, like if you have so many brand, they have to which one I want to find, which one I most the most I like. So but in your in the apa analysis part, it's not very difficult lah kan, because it's very straightforward. So you just rank, and from the rank you can just average all the respondent, and then you get which the one with the least number will become the most apa preferred brand lah. Okay, the advantage here is take less time as compared to pack comparison, because as you see that if you have a lot of brand, then the numbers of question will become more. Okay, respondent need to decide n minus one times only. Just now they have to consider for each one, kan? So this one you just need to consider, because once you get now 1, 2, 3, 4, then the last one no need to think lah, kan? Of course that is the last apa the last rank. So you need to decide n minus one. So you have 5 brand, you only need to decide 4 times. The last one is automatically lah, not preferred. Okay, commonly used to measure preference. Rank order data is obtained in conjoint analysis. Okay, usually in product and pricing analysis lah. Okay, so they do this in the marketing. Soalnya this type of question is used in the marketing, because they use this a lot in their marketing strategy, in how they're going to apa promote their product. So this is very popular in marketing, especially for product and pricing analysis. Disadvantage, data obtained is ordinal. Still, you don't have enough information lah, kan, untuk to get the information. Okay. Next, uh, okay, this one is constant sum scaling. This is under comparative juga, but instead of you put the number of preference, you ask them to put the number, this because you want to make it ordinal is lower level, kan, lower level. So you want to make it interval, kan. You want to up a bit your analysis. Okay, because ordinal not much thing that you can do for analysis. But if your data is interval, there's so many analysis that you can try. So if you, in order for you to up your measurement from ordinal to interval, you might change a little bit lah on your scaling. So when you do the scaling, okay, you have the, instead of the price, tadi kita change kan. Just now we just choose, okay, 1 to 5. But here you ask them to give percentage. Total must be 100. Okay, so if you can see here, okay, if you do the preference 1 to 5 only, you only know, okay, I like Dali better than Systema. Okay, but you don't know how much more he like Dali from Systema. Kan? So if with this scale, you can see, okay, let's say the highest percentage is, you can see here is 50 price. Okay, this one nak tengok apa ni? Detergent. So how they buy the detergent? Okay, how do they buy detergent? Okay, the first thing that look at the price. So the weight for the price is 50. So you know that, okay, in deciding which brand to choose, 50%, half of the decision come from the price, because the weight ada here 50. Next one will be cleaning power. So then only they look at the cleaning power. So the rate is 30. So it below lah, meaning that they will compare the price first. They will go for the cheaper price. Okay, if the price is the same, so which one to choose? Then they go for cleaning power. Okay, and then after that you go for packaging pula. Okay, is it the appearance is very compelling ke tak, kan, attractive ke tak? Then you decide. Okay, so here you can see that not only you get which one is the most preferred, but you also know the distance, how much more they like the price compared to the other factor. Okay, so this one you up again lah, you up little bit, okay, from ordinal to interval. Okay, so allows fine discrimination among stimulus object without requiring much time. But the only thing is that it's very difficult for the respondent, need to calculate pula. Okay, when you calculate, you tengok the total is not 100, the total become 110. Kan? So what are you going to do? So actually it's not a problem lah. So you just rescale balik lah. So you scale balik, it become 100 kan. Katalah is 110, so you have to divide back to 110, then you get back the 100. So but the respondent is need to require some mathematical skill lah to do the summation. So might be a bit tedious for the respondent. Okay, and it
Aida,
yeah.
Aida, but
Yep.
this one is sorry to interrupt
Mm.
because this is so much interesting. I think maybe this one because this is very in depth. I think this
Mm.
one is very useful for the master by research and PhD students, right? Because
Yes, yes. Mm.
we are
Mm.
telling the level of preferences not in term of Likert, but in then
Mm.
uh, uh, very detailed
Yes.
of it, right?
Then you can do the analysis that you're going to apply is more complex lah, kan. So as you know
Mm,
lah, the more complex is the more complex analysis that you use, of course
mm.
the more prestige lah, kan, lagi macam wow.
It's
Kan.
like
So
it's like showing the weightage of the preferences, right?
yes, yes, correct.
Okay, okay.
So you
Thank
can
you.
see the difference. Eh? So this is how you have to decide lah, kan. Everything is the same. It's just that how to what level you want your analysis to be, kan. So this is another level. So this is under still lagi comparative. Your objective is still the same. You just want to compare, but you have extra information that you can tell, okay, in your report. Okay, so this is the comparative scale. Okay, another one. Okay, this one is not much so use. Okay, next one, Saiful. Okay, this one is Q sort scale. Q sort scale is usually when you want to develop the questionnaire. Develop the questionnaire. Okay, you give them a paper. Okay, this one is to make it more interesting lah. But this one, of course, you have to do in a group. You have to do in a group. You cut the paper and then let them apa put the paper together. So this one is a Q sort scale. So they have to take the paper and then they have to rearrange according to their cluster. Okay, so how do you feel? Okay, how do you feel? So they just put lah. Okay, I collect fear, and then this one is another way of comparative scale lah. But this one is more to qualitative, but very interesting. This one is applicable if you apa if you are doing your research, okay, to the children, okay, to the children, okay, because instead of words, okay, you ask them in words, you give them picture, and then they can let's say you want to ask the children preference, so it's very difficult to ask in sentence, and so what you can do is you put the picture, so you put the picture and then they put where, okay, let's say you have the all the cards, then you put all the boxes, and then you ask the children to put the picture in the boxes. So this is another way. Okay, of course the target audience will be different lah for this one. Okay, kalau kita buat instrument, then definitely you're not going to use the Q sort scale lah. Okay, next, Saiful. Okay, that one is all comparison. So the objective, if you want to do for comparative scale, is if you want to compare. Okay, you have the preference and you want to know the depth lah. Okay, how much is they prefer to another brand. Okay, non-competitive scale, again I said non-competitive scale meaning that you want to measure the preference, the factor that contribute to the preference, but you don't want to know, you don't want to compare them. Okay, you can calculate based on the weightage, but you don't really know whether your weightage is correct or not, because you don't get them to compare it side by side, kan. So So this one is non-competitive scale. So we have a continuous rating scale. So continuous scale, you can see that these are all the continuous lah. You have the apa the numbers here. Okay, so you can put like probably the worst, probably the best. So they just put, and here is actually the scale. They just put the value. So this one is continuous. As you know, continuous is a ratio atau interval. So the higher level. So you have to the researcher need to calculate lah. You have the ruler, kan? You have the ruler. So you have to measure where is X. So let's say the line here is 10 centimeter. Okay, so 10 centimeter, it represent 100. So so the respondent don't have to think. They don't have to think whether, okay, how much point do I have to put? Okay, so instead of just putting the point, I just put X somewhere. Okay, so then you as a researcher, you need to calculate lah. You have to calculate the distance from probably the worst to then you get value pun it will become a ratio juga, interval juga lah. So it will be like higher level. Okay, this one if you want to guide them lah. Okay, probably the worst to probably the best. But you just highlight, okay, this is 10, this is 20. So you give them at least highlight lah. Okay, this is where you have to put lah 70 ke 80. So they want to put 70 but they don't know where is 70. Cannot imagine where is 70. Where is 50 pun cannot kan. Sometimes if you like me, I cannot see the distance kan, but the proper distance. So I don't know. Okay, where is the middle lah? Where is the quarter? So if you put this, at least you can guide them lah kat mana, kan? Or you can just put like simple, very bad, neither good or bad, very good. So you have the indicator there. Okay, so at least they know. Okay, if I put here means that it's not very good, but it's still good, but it's almost very good. So they put here. Okay, so this is a non-comparative scale. Okay, but you arrange it so that instead of Likert scale only, so this is one of the way dah. This is what we call continuous. So the value that you get is higher than Likert scale. Okay, tapi sama je. Let's say you say Colgate, kan? Say Colgate tadi letak kita very much dislike until very much like, kan? So instead of you put 1 to 5, you put the scale. This is a continuous. Okay, so next. Okay, itemize. Itemize is like the one that I think everybody been using this lah kan. So these are all the questions. So you say 7-Eleven sells high quality merchandise. So you just tick whichever you your rate lah. Your rate. You just rate whatever that you tick here. Okay, so this is a Likert scale. So this one is itemized rating. Okay, advantage easy to construct and administer. Responder readily understand how to use the scale because this is widely used. Okay, this advantage takes longer time to complete than other itemized rating scale because they need to think juga. Okay, they need to think. So care need to need to be taken when involve cross cultural research lah. So when it involve like different culture, so you have to think about that also lah. Okay, so this is another non-competitive scale, but this one is the most commonly used lah. Kalau you guna Likert scale, this is it lah. Okay, next.
Aida,
Yep.
hold on. The back, before this.
Back.
Okay, I can see here neither agree nor disagree. The middle one. Is it same as neutral?
Yeah, same.
Same. Okay, but the later nanti question nanti whether 4 Likert or 5 Likert lah later on. Thank you.
It's the same thing, just that I do you want to put fair ke neutral ke kan, meaning that the center line is not one of that lah kan, cannot decide lah, senang cakap, undecided.
Okay, boleh proceed.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next. This is semantic difference scale. Okay, semantic difference scale is like Likert scale, but you have two item. For example, you said here fast and slow. Okay, say you are talking about the service that you are giving. Is your service is fast or slow? So you ask them to rate. So this is the one that I think Dr. Pizza know about this. Okay, you can use a certain analysis like AHP kan. Then you can use this one lah. So that means the respondent need to choose one only. So if they put in the middle, meaning that both are the same. Okay, fast, sometimes slow. They cannot decide. Okay, but here you can, instead of just a Likert scale, but you can also see the positive and negative side of the rating tu. Okay, for example sini substantial dan superficial, so they have to decide. So if they think that is more superficial than substantial, then you can put 4 or 5 lah kan. But if you're using this normal Likert scale, you don't have this. You don't have the other differential ni. You only have like, okay, our service is fast like that. So you just evaluate. Okay, but here you give the respondent a chance to to provide opinion, okay, based on positive and also negative part. Okay, so this one is more, but of course this one, if you want to analyze, is you cannot analyze the same way like you analyze the Likert scale. So this one require higher level of statistical analysis to uh, analyze lah. But higher level does not mean complicated. HP is actually is a higher level of statistical analysis, but the calculation is actually very easy. Okay, especially if you don't have not much item, the calculation is not very difficult. Okay, but when you present, okay, when you present your report, of course the examiner will say that okay, this is better than the common one. Okay, so this is semantic differential scale. So commonly used juga. Okay, of course it will require different analysis lah. Okay, next. Okay, this one is a staple scale. So staple scale ni is something like that, but they give you more values. For example, here friendly, personal. So they don't give you they don't give you two types of information, but they just put here negative and positive. So for example, you say the price. Okay, so the price, instead of you put just the price 1 to 5, okay, then you put negative anti positive. So you know that if you put negative, meaning that they don't like. Okay, then probably they think that okay, the price is not worth it with the quality of the product. Okay, so here you just give one indicator, but you allow the respondent to rate them positively or negatively. This is similar like Likert scale. Cuma Likert scale is up to 5 only. So this one you can extend. You can extend plus 5, and then you can extend to -5. So when you put the negative part, okay, negative sign, okay, it will show that this is a negative response lah. Kan, it's clear lah. So when the respondent look at this, the respondent know if they don't like about the price, so they, kalau Likert scale you just put like 1 kan, tapi kalau this one you can put negative lah, and then negative lah is a negative, and you can put like negative to how much the distance, is it very negative or is it just like the price is not okay, but not so bad lah. So -1. So -5 means it's very negative. So this one is another. So we call this a staple scale that probably you can consider juga macam ni lah. Cheap, okay, dia buat -5 to 5. Okay, quality merchandise we give -5 and 5. So in this case, okay, instead of you just present the number that represent all this information, you can also tell them the negative part. Okay, when you report, the customer, okay, rated negatively to the price of the product, for example, because you already have the information. Okay, you already have in your data, you already collected whether they have a negative response or positive response. So another level lah. So when you explain, there are more to explain lah daripada yang the earlier one, kan? Okay, so next. Okay, next. Okay, that's enough lah for the skill that you can use in your questionnaire. Okay, of course, these are the things that you need to consider. Number of skill categories you need. Okay, you want to use Likert 5 ke, you want to use Likert 7 ke, or you want to have more than that ke, or you want to have extra lagi nak guna continuous ke. So these are the things that you have to consider. Number of items to measure concept. Let's say you want to measure satisfaction. How many questions do you need to measure the customer satisfaction? Okay, let's say you want to about the location ataupun the facility around that area. Okay, that contribute to the decision whether to buy or not. So is it enough if just put school? Okay, just enough. Is it enough if you put park only and school? So probably there are other things that people require. For example, okay, it's near to religious place kan, masjid ke, temple ke. So that will give them higher rate to buy that property kan. So how many items do you need, okay, in order for you to come up with a okay, facilities is important for the potential buyer to decide whether to buy the house or not. Okay, so this is very important. So how many, odd or even number of categories, balanced scale or unbalanced scale. So macam tadi lah, if you put odd, meaning that you allow for the neutral part kan. Let's say you put 3 kan, 3, so if Likert scale means that if you don't know which one to choose, you can put 3. Okay, so sometimes researcher don't want that. They don't want, they say okay, if I put neutral, then they won't they don't want to answer, they just put 3 je because they don't want to decide. Okay, so they opt for apa, even ataupun unbalanced kan. So bila unbalanced, so for statistic, okay, especially in social science, if you do that, it's true. It's easy for you to do the analysis, but actually you limit the respondents' rights lah, kan? Because they have the rights. Okay? When you ask for the respondent to answer, they have the right what they want to answer. So if you didn't put the neutral, actually you are forcing them. You are forcing them to like or don't like. But actually, if you are the one, okay, if you are the children, kan, your parent force you. You don't like parents to force you, right? So you want to decide. So you also have like, okay, mommy, I cannot decide lah. Can you decide for me or not? So you have the neutral part there, okay. But if you force them, then you are actually taking the rights away from your respondent. So statistically, it's unethical lah. But there's nothing wrong with it. You cannot be sued lah because of that. But uh, as I said lah, it's not very not. You look at the question, alamak, this question is not friendly. They don't allow me to do neutral. So tapi banyak orang tak nak buat neutral because dia kata
Yeah.
kalau buat neutral, orang answer neutral je kan.
What if because sometimes they avoid to put the neutral because they said sometimes people want to answer the questionnaire in a hurry, so they just put all neutral or most majority of it neutral. So if that
Yeah.
case, how?
That one cannot that's beyond our control. Kan.
Oh,
But
okay. Itu
if
kena later
uh,
web analysis untuk webinar 3 pula. Analysis neutral banyak macam mana.
kan,
Okay, dah.
you have to
Thank you.
redo lah. Kan.
So meaning that we
That's mean
mm,
your respondent is not the correct respondent lah.
yeah,
Kan. Kan.
okay.
The,
All
because
right.
they cannot do. Okay. But the right way is for you to put the neutral lah so that you can give freedom to the respondent. Okay. Alright. Next one. Okay. Okay. This one is important juga. Okay. Characteristic of a good measurement. So how do you know that your instrument is good? Okay, so valid and reliable. These are the two words lah that you have to know. Okay, what is valid, what is reliable? Okay, you can see the picture here. Okay, so if you say unreliable and unvalid, so reliables mean, okay, valid mean it's supposed to measure what it has to measure. Okay, for example, let's say I want to measure the length of kata toothbrush. So what instrument that I can use? I can use a ruler, one of the measurement, and I also can use my hand kan, macam kita buat sejengkal. Okay, how many jengkal. Okay, and then you can use like just a rope. Okay, just use apa thread tu. Okay, just measure how long is the toothbrush. But all these measurement are valid. What does it mean valid? Because they are measuring what is they supposed to measure. There's nothing wrong with that. But when it say reliable means can this measurement, okay, does this instrument measure reliable or not? Mean that do they measure it correct, consistently correct? That is reliable. So if you look at the picture, okay, what is unreliable and valid? So you can see that the target is in the middle, kan? So target is in the middle. So this is unvalid because they cannot measure what you're supposed to measure. You cannot hit the target. So that is unvalid. So let's say you want to measure the height, but you are using the weighting scale. Cannot lah, because that is not valid. The instrument is not valid because the weighting scale cannot measure the height. So that is not valid. So if you say unreliable, you can see that all the respondents, okay, all the target is all scattered everywhere. So meaning that it's not reliable. So if the instrument is reliable, so it should even though it's unvalid, but it should measure uh, uh, consistent. Okay, for example, if you take the weighting scale, you want to measure the height, but you ask the people to sit on the weighting scale and then you measure. So let's say 10 respondents, you get the same. They can measure the weight very, very accurately, really consistent. But it's wrong because it's not supposed to measure the height. So that is unreliable and
That means
unvalid. So
there must be something wrong in the questionnaire that we've drafted.
yeah, question is wrong lah.
So I mean, this one can be also used for the analysis of pilot study for the
Yes,
first
yes.
indication. All right.
Betul. Then you have to do this. That's why it's the pilot study. When you do the pilot study, these are the things that you have to look into lah. Kan the instrument before you send it out to all the population. before you go for the real study. This is what you have to think first. So of course, how you measure valid and you have how you measure reliable, there are a lot of things to decide. So into that one is another session called Dr. Fiza. I cannot. So validity, there are a lot of validity, criteria
Mm.
validity, content validity lah, expert validity lah.
Mm.
Reliable is very easy sikit lah, because you can see whether they're consistent or not. Sometimes the instrument is not consistent because sometimes you have negative sentence, you have positive sentence. Of course, it's not reliable, kan? Sebab if you mix up positive statement and negative statement, of course, kalau they agree, one will be lower score, one will be higher score, kan? So that is not reliable. Okay, so if your instrument is not valid and it's not reliable, that means your instrument is wrong. What you want to have is, of course, both reliable and valid. You can see that the here, okay, the reliable tu, the target almost in the center. So the target is correct, valid, and it's consistent. Okay, all is consistent. So this is reliable and valid. You can see that the top right, okay, unreliable but valid. Valid because it measure uh, kenalah dekat dalam tu, but unreliable because it's scattered. Scattered. Okay, sebenarnya gambar ni sebenarnya keduduk kat tengah sikit, but it's scattered lah. It's all over the quadrant. So yang bottom left is reliable but not valid because it cannot hit the target, but it's very consistent. Okay, so these are the things that you need to. When do you need to measure this? Before you went all out, okay, to send your questionnaire to the respondent. So it must be appear in your pilot study. So
So that,
once you
that
know,
that means the best thing is both reliable and valid, but
yes,
unreliable but valid also is okay, right?
no lah, because that means the finding that you get might not be accurate lah.
Oh, so we must adjust
Yes,
our questionnaire
uh,
until we get the hit target, like
yes.
the right hand side here. So I think
Mm.
this is most important for the postgraduate student because
Mm.
they are must be able to defend their how sure they are about the
Mm.
findings and their questionnaire, right? So this is very
Betul?
important
Mm.
for
Yes.
the
Because if I'm
postgraduate
the
student.
panel, I will ask this question lah, kan? Have you checked
Okay.
whether your instrument
Hmm.
is valid or reliable or not? So if I say, I've checked,
Okay.
it's not valid. So of course lah, you kill yourself lah, kan?
So
Okay.
my that it will be my next question lah in the future if I'm the panel also. All right,
But you
thank
must
you,
know,
Aida.
but Divya, you must learn also lah. What do you mean by you say the question is valid? What do you do? Kan?
Itu jangan bocor
So
rahsia lah. Itu kena
and
berguru
then
dia.
you have to answer lah. Okay, I did the content validity from the expert, so I get this information, so it's valid. Kan?
Sometimes because the analysis in the pilot study they just in term of numbers how to read it, but
Yes,
this
correct.
one in term of diagram lah, pictorial
Mm,
demonstration. Sometimes
mm.
some people prefer this clearly seen, right? Something like
Yeah.
that.
So lah,
Alright,
mesti
alright.
okay. People know this must be valid, it must be valid, but they don't know what
Mm-mm.
what is valid kan, what is
Yeah,
reliable. So
yeah.
this picture will show you like clearly lah. Okay, valid and
Okay.
reliable. This is what we want. So
Alright.
if the panel, okay, if your
Mm.
student are doing instrument, memang you have to
Mm-mm.
ask. This is the thing.
Mm.
Okay, then
Mm-mm.
if you said that your instrument is not valid or it's not reliable, then out of the question lah, then your result will not be correct, kan?
Mm-mm. 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 Okay,
So you
okay.
don't, but the most important thing that you don't check that after end of the study lah, kan? You have
Mm-mm.
to check this before you start your study.
Alright. Okay, okay,
Okay.
dah boleh proceed.
Okay, okay. So these some of the conceptual mistake lah, like student would like to do. Okay, for example, in this study, the questionnaire consists of 29 items measuring the six source of stress. So I can show you the corrected one, then you can see the difference. What is the difference? So this one is look like not much problem. Okay, since the two parameters are both having ordinal values, Kendall's tau B was used to determine the correlation between them. So this is talk about the method. Okay, this one is a Malay lah. Sebanyak 400 sampel telah dikeluarkan daripada sejumlah 580 pelajar by this method. So these are all the mistake that student usually put in their concept lah. Maksudnya how they write. So the correct one, okay, the first one consists of items to measure. Okay, sorry, next one Saiful. Dah masuk next slide. This one is the mistake. Okay, so all these sentence that I give you here is all the like common mistake that student do. Okay, if you look at this question and then you can look at the next slide, Saiful. Okay, when you get the slide later, you can see side by side lah. Okay, this is the appropriate one. Okay, the same sentence but it's already corrected in a correct way. Okay, how you explain it. So the questionnaire use consists of 29 items to measure the level of stress. So tadi tu kita cakap measuring the six source of stress, but you have to tell, okay, what you usually measure. Okay, you actually measure the level of stress perceived to cause by six different sources. So you have to explain in detail lah what is your instrument do for your research. So since the two variables, before this there are two parameters. Parameters is not variable, so the term that you use must also be correct. Okay, so in order to be correct this one, you have to know lah what is the term that you use kan. Variable apa, object observation apa, what is observation, what is variable, what is parameter, what is statistic. All this term you have to know. Okay, because you are doing statistical analysis, so the term that you use in your report must be correct. Okay. Okay, and then this one
Dia boleh buat
asal
boleh buat dissertation, I mean boleh buat study ni, stress level on dissertation student, happiness
kan?
index dia semua.
Okay, then another study you can do, Dr. Fiza, you can collect all the student dissertation. Okay, then we look
Mhm.
at into all the common conceptual mistake. Kan, we read all the
Hmm.
thesis. Sometimes this one is terlepas pandang, the panel maybe
Yeah.
overlook kan all these things.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
if you look at like let's say we look at the one paper, okay, we just look,
Mm.
is it they're using the correct term or not, kan? Especially
Okay,
the
that
students
that
are
that
saying,
one we do another webinar for the
that
panel.
no, that
For
one
the
you have to
panel.
do. You have to do the research first. You have to collect all the students punya report. Okay, then you
Ah.
look at the concept ke methodology part. Okay, these
Hmm.
are the common mistake that they do. So avoid this. So at least you can tell the student lah. So don't do
Okay.
this. Kan? This is the correct way to explain, to interpret, kan?
Alright, alright.
To show the concept.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Alright.
Okay. So next, uh, okay, how large is your sample? Kan? This one is a when okay, let's say your item, your instrument are all dah ready lah, all valid, reliable kan. So next part, you want to collect the data. So you need to know how many respondents that you need to have for your sample. So how large? Okay, this one is not it's not like just a number that you can pick. Of course, there is some calculation lah. Out there are a lot of software that you can use, okay, to calculate the sample size. So I always ask my student, okay, no need to use the formula lah, just go to the Google and then just in your report you just explain lah you are using this apa online software, okay, to calculate your sample size. It's apa is accepted lah. Okay, you can use the online software and then to calculate because you need to get the sample size. But remember, this is the minimum sample size. The one that you calculate is of course minimum sample size. If you cannot get that number, okay, you have to justify lah why you cannot get that number. That okay, let's say you try, they kata you need to have 360 samples. So if you need 360 sample, sorry, not 360 sample, 361 observation. So if you cannot get 361 observation, that means you have to justify why. Okay, but if you can take more, it's nothing wrong with that. Okay, because the calculation that you do is actually for the minimum number of respondent in your sample. So that is the minimum. So if you get more than that, it's better. Okay, if you cannot get that number, this is the minimum number that you have, so that your study will achieve lah. So usually the study will depend on this lah. What is your confidence level? So let's say you say that your confidence at 95%. Lalu common lah 95%. So at 95% level to be confident of your result. So this is the number that you have to calculate. So these are all the things that you need to know before you key in the software. Okay, so that the software will give you the estimated number of observation in the samples needed. Okay, power of the test. So usually you use 80 power. Okay, confidence level is only 95%, and of course you need to have some information lah. For example, you want to know the preference of buying the product. So you need to know lah what is the at least the percentage. Okay, the percentage. Ataupun let's say you cannot get that number, you have to find something that you need to measure so that you can use that as a basis for your sample calculation. Okay, for example lah, I want to study okay number of illicit cigarette kat Malaysia. So I want to know currently okay how many okay are there, what is the percentage of the illicit cigarette, illegal kan, illegal cigarettes in Malaysia. Okay, I do not know how many number of I cannot have that number apa very accurate. So what I can do is I can just estimate how I can use the percentage of the smokers in Malaysia, for example. So you use this percentage of smokers, use that as a basis for you to calculate. So probably you can get another information, okay, about the tax. So let's say you have information about the tax, how much tax has been paid uh for the apa for the cigarette. So you can relate this and then you can come up with a sample size. So of course, next slide, there's a formula. Okay. But now I just suggest to my student no need to use a formula. Okay, unless you are statistics student and you use a formula. But if you're not statistics student, you just go to the online, just type sample size calculator. Then all sort of calculator will come out, and all the calculator are reliable lah. So not that say that some of the calculator is not reliable. No, you can try to because there are a lot all free. You can try and then you can see lah what is they're consistent or not can. So if they're consistent, then you can just use that and a report in your in your report also you have to take lah. Okay, sample size is calculated using apa software, what software, and the minimum sample size, okay, is berapa kan. That one you can report. So that one is very important because if you are doing quantitative research, you must quantitative research satu, you if you want to do primary, okay, primary data collection, you need to have the sample size. Okay, sometimes even though you are using secondary data pun you still need secondary you still need a sample size calculation. For example, you want to know how many patients record that you want to get from the hospital. You cannot get every apa it's not apa practical, it's not effective lah if you take all the patient kan. So you just need, okay, I just need like 300 patients to study this. So even though you are using secondary data, but in order for you to collect the records, you need the sample size calculation. So this is very important. So I don't want to stress you. This is also example. Next one, next slide. I give you some example that how you can use the the formula. Okay, but all this information, if you have this information, you just key in the calculator software calculator tu, then it will give you the number. Okay, for example, this one you get 384. So this is the minimum sample size lah. So if you get more than that, it's okay. If you get less than this, you have to justify why. Okay. So usually sample size ni dia relate dengan apa? It relate to is the thing that you want to measure is rare or not? Kan? If it's very rare, then you have to have a large number of sample size. Why? Because in order for you to capture the rare event, okay, you need to have a lot of observation to capture. But if the one that you want to measure is something is very common, so very common, so you don't need a large sample size. Kan, because even though you have a small sample size, okay, katalah 200 sample size, 200 number of observation, okay, and then 200 observation can give you the information because the thing that you want to measure is common. But if the things that you want to measure is very rare, okay, you want to find out who will buy the penthouse. You know that penthouse is not a lot in Malaysia, kan, and it's not very common. Okay, so in order for you to get the estimate, okay, it's very difficult. So you have to have a lot. The sample size must be very large. Okay, to get the information. So you have to bear that in mind lah. So whatever you target, okay, if it's rare, then you are expecting a larger sample size. But if something that you want is common, then you find out that the sample size that required is not that much. Okay, okay, next. Next, Saiful. Okay, so this one is if you are using comparison lah. So if you are compare between, let's say you want to compare male and female, that is your objective. So different calculation juga. Okay, let's say, okay, if it's part of your objective. So if this is important, okay, then you have to calculate based on different sample size lah. Okay, so there's a lot, actually banyak. Okay, banyak lah. There's a lot of formula. I cannot list down here. Okay, if you're doing this kind of study, calculation is different. If you're doing this kind of study, the calculation is different. So that's why I say just go to the online calculator, online sample calculator. Okay, then they will give you you don't need to worry about the formula. Okay, just put in everything that they need, then it will give you the sample size. Okay, so next. Okay, ni silap ni kena delete dah tadi. Okay, next. Okay, statistical analysis. This one lah. Okay, this one is statistical analysis. So I'm not going to this a lot. Okay, I think I'm concentrate more on the research questionnaire design tadi. Analysis, you have to really know lah the statistical method involved. So I only explain to you like some basic thing that you need. Okay, of course the next one will be statistik lah kan. Why do you need statistik? Because you are using quantitative, of course you need statistik. Or the process exhibit variability, so only statistic can capture the variability. So in most population it's not possible to study the whole population, so you have to study the sample. Because you are going to study the sample, that's why you need statistic, because statistic can generalize to the population. Okay, so if you have the census, okay, if you have the census, meaning that you have your study all everything in your population, you don't need the statistical analysis. You just describe. Because if your data is the population data, why you want to do inferential? Kan? Why you want to come up with a conclusion? Because your data already explained to you. If you have the census, you don't need any statistical analysis, just do descriptive saja. Okay, just do descriptive, describe only, because your data is the value that you have is a true value lah, because it's a census. Unless you are using a sample, that is where you need the statistical analysis, so that you can do generalization, or you can do inferential for your population. Okay. Okay, next. Okay, this one is just a chart. Okay. If you have a ni bukan qualitative research, this one is qualitative data, quantitative data. So what you need to do. So if you have a qualitative data, you have the percentage, mode, median, chart, table, cross tabulation. These are the things that of non-parametric. Okay, non-parametric ni I just want to explain this. Parametric and non-parametric. So of course qualitative cannot be normal. Okay, quantitative you have to, sebab you have to remember statistical analysis ni involve a lot of assumption. That is the most difficult part. If you want to do this analysis, there are certain assumptions that you have to meet. Okay, that one is another class lah. Kan? So you have to meet this assumption, then only you can use this analysis. Okay, so if you cannot satisfy the assumption, that's mean your data is not qualified to use the analysis. You have to opt for another. Bukannya kata you cannot do this analysis, so there is no other option. There is another option. Okay, there is option. If you cannot do this, you can apply this. Okay, but of course, this method will have some disadvantage. This method will have some advantage. So all analysis have their own advantage and disadvantages. You just need to know what you want to what you want, and then what are the things that you need to measure lah. For example, kata macam ni, kalau quantitative, we just want to describe, you just need mean, median, variance and graph. Okay. But if you want to measure the association, you need to have correlation analysis. Under correlation analysis, there are so many analyses that you can think of. Okay, for inferential, hypothesis testing, you want to do prediction, you want to do forecasting, so you have what you need to do. So this actually give you idea lah. So next, this is the same thing. Okay, mula-mula I actually I want to delete the first slides, but the first slide looks like very messy. So this one is nicer lah. So it's like the same lah. Okay, next. Okay, so these are the two things that you need to consider. Either you go for inferential. Okay, descriptive just chart, summary of statistic. Inferential is the analysis. Let's say, have you heard about t-test ke, ANOVA ke? This is where the inferential comes lah. So inferential is for generalization. Okay, there's that thing that you need to understand. So this one you will cover in the statistic class lah kot, but I'm not sure whether you take statistic class or not. Okay, it's very I cannot explain this in just 1 or 2 minutes. Just like just to give you a brief idea, descriptive is just describe. So describe is not much information lah kan. Just you give the pattern, you give the chart, you give the pie chart, you have the table, then it's descriptive. Inferential, you do some like correlation, you do some causal, that is inferential. So it's another steps of
Apa
statistics.
SPSS nanti kita buat bengkel.
Aduh. Okay, next. This is also important. As I said to you, your sample size must be representative of your population. I think you can read this. I don't need to explain this. Okay, you have a population, then your sample must come from your population. So your research must have target population. Who you want to study. So let's say you concentrating on customer in Selangor only. So you have your population will be Selangor je lah. Don't take your respondent from Perak pula. So you have to know your population well in order for you to get your respective sample size, your respective observation or respondent for your sample. Okay, next. This one is dah masuk more statistic banyak lah kan. So this is the hypothesis. Okay, hypothesis that you need to have the let's say okay, I said just now, generation X likes to prefer higher rise house, for example. That is your statement. So that is a statement. So this is what you call hypothesis lah. So hypothesis is let's say you say okay, the generation apa yang the latest generation apa, Dr. Fiza? Y, Z
Z, Z.
Z so
Mm.
generation Z prefer higher rise of house kan. So that is your hypothesis. So you have to come out, okay. But in reality, of course, your conclusion might not be true, might be true, might not be true kan. So this is what we call the error lah. So the error that you try to control. So when you calculate the sample size, actually you are try to minimizing all this error lah. So actually there will be error, definitely there will be error, but you try to minimize it. Okay, so usually we look into 5%. Okay, untuk dia punya rate of error dia. Okay, next. Okay, this one you have a lot of statistical software that you can use. Of course, you have to learn lah. In order for you to use, you have to learn first. Okay, Excel pun ada if you don't want to go for any like kalau Excel everybody have access the computer. Kalau if you're using SPSS you need license. If you're a student probably you can get the license. But SAS is also a license. So you can use whatever you have. Excel is there but it's limited lah. Not a lot of analysis that you can do. But now they come a lot of free software available. Okay, if you don't like, there are free software, ada yang a bit difficult, that's when they need you to do coding. Ada yang very friendly, look like SPSS but don't need coding. Okay, but of course all the free software has limited lah compared to the license one. Okay, next one. This is you need to remember, statistical packages are not magic. So don't try because you are the researcher. Even though you get the result from the software, don't trust it 100%. Okay, because the master, okay, is still you. Okay, so you have to decide whether when you get the result, is your result is logic or not? Is it correct or not the result? So don't trust everything that is come out from the statistical software. Okay, I'm not saying that it's not good. It's good, but you are the one who know well about your research. So you have to know, especially in your area, kan, in your domain area. Okay, you have to know whether the result that you get is correct or not. Is it according to the theory or not? Okay, or is it this is what you are expecting? Okay, if it's not, then it's not the statistical packages that is wrong, but maybe your data or your input that you give to the statistical package is not correct lah. Okay, remember no garbage in, garbage out. Okay, whatever you put in the statistical package, of course you can get. You put like everything. You put everything. Of course the package will give you the result. Okay, but the result is correct or not? That one you have to. So that's why before you do the analysis, before you collect the data, you must make sure that your instrument. So that is the most important. That's why I spent a lot of time today discussing to you about the instrument. Okay, what are the things that you need to consider? Okay, in order for you to get a good result. Okay, so once you have the data, you cannot do anything anymore. You already have the data. You just put in the information. If it's not correct, then you cannot publish it. If it's correct, then you publish it. And if your data collection is not appropriate, okay, then you might not get a result that you want. Okay, probably your result is contradict with other research kan. So there's something wrong lah kan. Okay, so next. Okay, this one I think all of these you can read lah kan. For example, I put here exploratory data analysis, when you want to use a table, when you use to chart, summary. So this is just a basic lah. So this one is you go under analysis part. Okay, and then you need to do a graphical next one. So this one is just, I think I don't have to go through all this lah kot. Okay, so this one is the graphical data. So just go through je Cypher, all the graph. Okay, this one is a pie chart. Okay, you can have apa? I explain to you. Okay, what is the important? Okay, what do's and don'ts lah if you want to use this chart. So these are all the things that you can look into my notes. Okay, I think Cik Saiful will. Okay, this one is okay. Stop kat sini jap. This one is the improper use of bar chart. So there are certain things that is not correct. Okay, for example, you want to show the trend. Okay, here you have 1997 to 2005. Okay, if you have time base, okay, okay, if you have the time base as one of your variable, then bar chart is not appropriate. You cannot use bar chart for continuous item. Okay, this is wrong. This is very wrong. But you see a lot of this in the reporting. Kalau you tengok dalam surat khabar, if you look in the magazine, okay, they always show the trend sometimes using the bar chart. That is very statistically wrong. Okay, the correct way is next slide, Saiful, is to use the line chart. Okay, if you have a continuous data, let's say 1997 to 2005, then you have to use the time plot in order for you to see the trend. You cannot use bar chart. So there are certain things that you can do, certain things that you cannot do. So this one you have to practice, and of course you have to read a lot lah. Read a lot, read most of the articles a lot lah. So if you look at the articles pun, there are many types of article. Ada grey article, ada white article kan. So if you look into the journal, because journal usually the article is published based on the reviewer. So reviewer you usually already see lah whether it's correct or not. So most likely if you take the article from a good journal, okay, the information that published there might be correct. But if you just take like just grey literature atau like just something from Google but it's not published or it's not in the good journal, so the information that you get there might not be appropriate lah. So some, because that's why, because of that, some of the research area, okay, they don't really accept the grey literature. Well, you cannot just simply take any paper that is you can find in the Google, then you take that as a reference, especially when it has to do with some article published in certain website kan. So you cannot trust that 100%. Okay, for your academic purposes, okay, you need to refer only good quality paper. Kalau good quality paper, it can be found in a good journal lah. Okay, that is more appropriate. Okay, next. Okay, this one is you have a continuous data, not bar chart. This is not a bar chart. This is a histogram. Okay, next. Okay, so you need to understand lah the distribution. So all the graph will give you the distribution. Okay, you can just go through Saiful. Okay, I think this one or you can use lah. Okay, okay, so this term and leaf plot. Okay. Okay, this is an example. Okay, this is a box plot. Okay, this one is for quantitative data. You can use this for quantitative data. Next. Okay, this one. Okay, next Saiful. Okay. Sebelum before that ada tak? Is there one? Tak ada. Oh, okay, never mind. Okay, next slide. Okay. This one. Okay, this one you can use box plot to compare juga. Okay, you can actually you can try a lot of visualization. Visualization will be good for your presentation actually. Can instead of you just put everything numbers. Okay, why don't you try to explore some of the visualization for your report, especially for your presentation. Okay, that will like give a like wow factor lah to your paper, to your report. Sebab if you just put the numbers, sometimes can be boring. Okay, if you can add in some graphical, will be better. Okay, next. Okay, there is some inspiration. Okay, this one, improper use of line chart. Okay, this is improper. Okay, because you can see that this one is actually a line chart. So a line chart usually is for time base. You can see here food stuff, housing and clothing kan kat bawah ni. So if you look at the line is connected. So meaning that you are connecting food stuff to housing and housing to clothing. Okay. If you look at just the graph, probably you cannot see what is wrong there. But this is a categorical. So categorical, they are independent, they are not related. So if they are not related, you cannot put a line. So this is the opposite of this one that I show you now. When you use bar chart to the time, because time is continuous. Okay, you cannot split the time. You cannot, even though you say 1997, 1998, but you say 1997 and 1998, they are connected. So when they are connected, line chart will be appropriate because the line chart will connect all this year. But this one, because you have category, don't use line chart lah, because line chart is not appropriate because they are not connected. You cannot just simply connect food stuff and housing. That is very wrong. Okay, so this is an example of wrong chart. Okay, the proper way is to do this lah. Next one. next slide. Okay, this is the proper is proper. Okay, to display your result tadi kan. You have the bar chart and then you can see that okay between male and female. So female like to spend on clothing instead of you use the line chart. So all these things you have to refer to statistic jugalah kan. Okay, what is appropriate, what is not. Okay, next. Okay, you can have a dimensional, three dimension. Okay, but of course it will be more difficult to explain. Okay, next one. Okay, this one is also a visual, but this one is a 3D visual, so very difficult also to explain, but it's nice to see. Okay, next. These are all this. I just share you what whatever. So this one is a scatter chart, and it also displays some. Let's make you have three things that you can display here. This is the salaries, and then this is the department, and this is the number of members. So you can have display. So instead of you just use that normal chart, try to look for a chart that is you can display a lot of information lah. Okay, next. Okay, so this one. Okay, I just put this. Okay, can you detect the errors in the output or not? Okay, for example, age. Okay, minimum 1, 7, maximum 7. Okay, I don't know what the research is, but probably correct lah. Gender, so 1 and 2, and then the mean. So there are something that you cannot, you cannot apa? You cannot put it in you cannot calculate mean for everything. Okay, for example, katalah age ni, probably age ni is not 1 to 7 years age code kan. Probably this one is category. So the first category until the 7 category. So kalau category, you cannot calculate the mean. And gender pun you cannot calculate the mean. Departure date you cannot calculate mean for the date kan. So there are things that you can show, something that you cannot show is wrong. Okay, so please make sure that you understand like the basic concept of statistic. Like for example, what is the mean for? What is the median for? What is the range for? Then only you when you present your result, that you will be correct way to present. Belum lagi cakap this one is error ke tak. You know, it's just is a correct way to display or not. Okay, so this one tadi yang kan this one you can see that distorting the truth pictures, export versus import of petroleum. So this is something that apa, because import probably is not standardized. For example, let's say you put two things which is have different apa different unit that you put in one graph, so it will give you a wrong interpretation juga. Okay, next. Okay, you can see not this one. Okay, this one is stretching the truth so far. Okay, you look at this salesman A ni kan. Okay, this one only one graph. So when you look at the first graph, you see that wow, salesman A ni dia punya sales is increase every month kan. Every month. So from 20 to 60 to 100. So if you look at this graph only, you say that okay, salesman is very good because the sales keep increasing. But if you look at the other graph where they compare salesman A and salesman B, you will get a different picture. See or not? Though you see the first picture, salesman A tadi, you go, wah, salesman A ni quite good lah. The sales is very good. But if you look, you compare salesman A to salesman B, it's actually like sun and moon can very different. Okay, so this one actually salesman B. Okay, then if you put salesman B here, then automatically you know salesman A is not good. See how visualization can make you see different thing. Okay, so that's why I say statistic you can manipulate. Okay, but you not manipulate. I mean manipulate is not manipulate, change the numbers, but you show something else, it means something else. Okay, so different type of apa graph that you show, it might show you different thing. Okay, so I think move Saiful, I think just move to the advantage. I think this one you can see. Okay. Okay, this one. So finally we go here. Okay, advantage and disadvantage of quantitative. Okay, advantage of course it can be uh, text. Bukan texted ni. Apa ni? Check. Bukan check. Nanti saya tengok balik ayat ni. Sebenarnya bukan texted. It can be check. Nanti saya tengok balik apa ayat dia saya nak cakap ni. Okay, straightforward analysis. Okay, because you do the analysis all very straightforward. Prestige meaning that if you increase the level of your analysis, then of course it will be very prestige, can generalize to population. Disadvantage is because it limited to its focus on numbers. So everything you change to numbers. Some things that you cannot change numbers, so you change to numbers. But that's what you do kan when you do quantitative. So this is where you have the loopholes lah. Okay, because everything it turn to number, and sometimes the number it might not be accurate. Okay, false focus. Okay, difficulty setting up a research model. So as you know, that is very difficult to set up. Okay, you can see that the question, the instrument, or kan, even the question also you need to think a lot. Okay, to come up with the instrument, and the numbers can be misleading lah. Just like I show you when I show you the graph between classmates A and CSMS B. So sometimes the information that you show might be misleading. Okay, so this one I think I already touched on that last week. Last week Ini saya pun next slide. Okay. Okay, when to use the, I put it here again. So just in case that you need to capture back. Okay, qualitative and quantitative research. Okay, next one. How to choose. I already explained this last series. Okay, but you can read. I think it's very straightforward. Okay, how to choose which one to take, qualitative or quantitative. And next one is a suggestion of mixed method lah. Mixed method again lah. You can start with You can start apa? You can start with next lagi. Saiful. Okay, you can start with quantitative, qualitative. So usually mixed method will give you better idea, like, especially if you want to do the instrument. Nak buat instrument, to come up with the instrument, the questionnaire, you need some qualitative study, okay, from the expert lah, to come up with the final instrument. Okay, and of course, I think you just go through all Saiful sampai thank you. Okay, that's it. I think I hope that whatever I share with you this morning will at least you can have something lah to take away or benefit in your research lah somehow. Okay. Okay, Tafiza, I think I'm
All
done.
right. Okay,
Sorry, it's more than
thank
1
you,
hour.
Aida. Thank you very much, Aida. Kita pun sama-sama belajar, very useful, very informative, semua banyak apa ilmu-ilmu and knowledge. Detail dah macam bengkel ni. Apa ni? Okay, so now we are open to the Q&A on floor for any Q&A. So this is the opportunity for the postgraduate students, or maybe if you have the undergrads, to ask about the your thesis, especially for those whether in the pilot study stage or the analysis stage. So you can ask whether to on your microphone and ask, or state in the chat box. Any question? Lagi diorang segan kot Aida. Okay. Alright. Maybe one question from me, Aida. Aida. Hello. Aida. Aida. Hello, Aida. Okay, tak apa. For today's session, let me summarize. So we've got so many valuable information on the as a conclusion, we've got insight and information on the differences between quali and quanti. So we are at end of the session. The quanti. So for today, Point Aida have explained to us about the types of quantitative data or methods, which includes descriptive, correlational, causal, experimental, and she also had explained about the differences between the quali and quanti, the types of quanti, the methods of data analysis, the basic measurement techniques, the advantages, and a lot of example along the way. So thank you very much, Aida.
Welcome. Sorry terkeluar tadi.
Sorry,
Lost
tak apa,
internet.
tak apa. Okay, there's one question here in the chat box from Faiz Sharil. Okay, Faiz ask question is, if I do formal interview with the expertise, is it enough for 1 or 2%? I think he's asking about the appropriate number for qualitative
I
with
think
their expertise.
yeah, if they are really the expert, then that should be okay.
1 or 2.
Yeah, expert. Yeah, because they are the
Okay.
expert. Because there's a formal interview, kan. So if you go for the formal interview, you can go deeper. Like you can ask a lot of questions, kan. It's not like
Mm-mm.
if let's say you do the give instrument for the expertise, 1 or 2 is not enough lah, kan. But if you go
Mm-mm.
for interview, then I think 1 or 2 should be okay,
Mm-mm.
appropriate, and you have to ask a lot of questions from the expertise to
Mm-mm.
get more information.
Mm-mm. Maybe Faiz can go to the my YouTube channel, SR Dr. Hafiza Ismail, and because there's a recorded of series one, by Puan Aida on qualitative, on the sampling for the expertise interview. Right? Okay. So
Okay.
any other question from the members of the floor? Okay, the link for recorded for series one in my YouTube channel. So the second series for today, I'll upload it in a while. So any other question? Saiful, Akrisha, any question?
Doktor, saya ada soalan.
Okay, Arisha. So Arisha is our final year for dissertation. Okay,
Okay, doktor,
Arisha.
soalan saya.
Mm.
Is it important to conduct the pilot study? Contohnya macam bila kita distribute questionnaire, dan bila kita dah dapat about 30 to 50 respondent, kita conduct pilot study. Ke boleh tak buat juga?
Macam mana tadi soalan dia balik semula? You dah
Ah,
conduct pilot study.
Dah distribute questionnaire and dah
Pilot
dapat
study.
about
Pilot
30
study
to
dah
50
buat lah.
respondent.
Ni tengah cerita
Belum,
pasal.
baru collect data.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
I think you have to stop first lah. You do the pilot. You need to do pilot study because as I mentioned earlier, kan, your instrument must be reliable and valid. Unless you take somebody else like already validated questionnaire, it's different. Kan, if you have your own, you are using your own instrument. Okay, I think you should stop now first. Okay, and then just take that as your pilot study, and then you check whether it's reliable or valid or not. Then only you can proceed lah. If not, let's say you find out that it's not valid or it's not reliable, so it's no point for you to continue with your data collection. So pilot study is very important, especially if you're using primary data collection and especially if you're using instrument. Mesti.
Okay, Aida.
That is a must.
Mungkin dia dah terjalan dulu, dia nak terus buat
Numbers.
file.
That's it. That's why I said just stop first.
Ah,
Stop and then do the
ah,
pilot.
itulah dia
Okay,
punya
you still can amend.
dia gear
You
tu
still
lagi
can
sangat
amend.
nak siap tu. So jadi tak apa,
Uh,
boleh hold kejap. So backward lah. I mean, jadikan itu
mm,
sebagai pilot study,
mm,
confirmkan dulu, tengok mana valid tak valid. So that nanti tak adalah you dah buat baru later ada benda
mm.
tak valid, macam ni dah leceh kan.
So it's better late than never lah kan.
Betul tu. Alright, thank you Arisha, thank you Aida. So any other question? Maybe is there any our PhD student here, or any other students want to ask? No. Okay. One last
I have
question.
questions.
All right. Okay, Yusrina.
Yeah, I have
Okay,
questions.
Yusrina.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
How do we do the constant sum scaling? Can we do it in min or how is it?
You mean the analysis or what?
Yeah, the data analysis. Yeah.
Okay, let's say you have all the people already answer kan. So you have let's say you have 100 respondents. So you have to collect lah. You sum all the respondent punya answer tu, then you get the total marks for each value. Then you estimate from there.
Okay. For example, right, I have questions regarding the factors. So each factors, I have like few questions. So if I do mean of every questions and then I like sum up it again in order like the factors of financial. So it means like I add up everything and I take the mean again. So what kind of analysis is that?
What do you mean you add again, then you mean again?
like how is it? Because it's if you would like to know about one factors, it needs like a few questions that relate that know that how far is their ranking, like the Likert, right? So I want to know like can I do like every questions I take the mean and then I combine the similar factors and I take the mean again. And is that
No,
a
that's not correct way lah. Actually, it's the
oh,
domain. You have to take the mean for all the questions. For each respondent, for that particular domain, financial, you take the mean.
I
That's
mean,
the correct way.
Yusrina, maybe you can,
Mm,
if is it okay for you to share the title of your
uh,
study?
oh,
Maybe Puan
oh,
Aida can give some advice on.
oh, my question is that the purchasing decision of the next generation, meaning the generation Z's factors of buying
So
residential
one of
property.
the is a financial lah kan. So financial
Yep.
this is it's just a normal way lah. So you have that component. You have to, like, every respondent you have the mean. So it means for
Mm-mm.
one respondent you have the mean for financial. So you have another respondent mean for the financial. Then only you do analysis based on the mean.
That's what I mean.
I
Yeah. Yes.
I would prefer mean. I would prefer
Uh-huh.
mean because instead of sum, because sum
Mean.
probably you
Okay.
have other domain. Another domain mungkin you have not 5 question. For example, financial probably you have 5 question. You
Okay.
have another thing, you have 7 questions. So when you take the sum, then it will not be standardized. So we take the mean.
Mm.
Unless if your question is all the same number of item. For example, financial you take 5, okay, Medela you take 5. So the total will be 25. So every domain you have 25. So that is you standardize. So meaning that if you take the sum, doesn't matter if you take the mean or the sum is okay. But if your domain have different number of question, then definitely you sum will not be appropriate. Then you cannot measure. Can.
Okay, then I'll take a mean lah, because some factors I have more questions, some factors I have less. So I
Nah.
should take a mean lah.
Sekejap.
You should, okay. So Yusrina clear, very clear.
Yeah, sure. Inshallah. Okay.
All right, all the best, Yusrina. Okay, we've got
sure.
one more question from Nohayati Ahmad Saleh. This is also our final year student for the thesis. Salam, Doctor. Salam, Puan Aida. Chromebox Alpha can be considered as reliability test for our questionnaire.
Yes, but you have to remember, okay, when you do the reliability test, let's say you cannot do for the whole the whole instrument lah. For example, let's say you have 43 question, okay, and then this 43 question can be split into 7 components. So when you do the reliability, you don't do reliability for all 43 questions. You have to do reliability for each domain. So then you know that that domain measure the specific domain only. So let's mean there are 7 questions on first domain. So you calculate the reliability, the Cronbach alpha for that 7 question only. Okay, and then you take another domain. That means instead of you have only one reliability score, you have 7 components. So you have 7 reliability. You have 7 Cronbach alpha value lah. Okay, that means you can use Cronbach alpha, but you have to do separately for every component. You cannot just take one Cronbach alpha and then you say that your instrument are reliable.
So that means if you have 5 factors, that means you must test all your 5 factors to see the validity, right?
I think I saw one question here. We adapt questionnaire from other author. Do we need to do another pilot study? Okay. We can adopt, we can adapt, and we can develop. Okay, instrument. So develop is very clear lah. You make your own questionnaire. So that is develop. So of course, if you develop, you have to do everything. Okay. Adapt is meaning that you take other people's questionnaire, but some of the question you edit, okay, some of the question you take it out and then you put in another question, or probably adapt means you take a few questionnaire, you combine and then you put as one. So adapt is considered like develop juga. It's just that you don't have to go for the content validity, because this one is another, I haven't explained on that one, okay, because validity itself, there are a lot of validity. You have to go for the content validity, you have to go for criteria validity, a lot. Okay, if you are changing the language, you have to do the translation validity. Okay, so these are the things that you have to do. So some of the things that you need to adapt. Okay, you need to recalculate or redo the pilot study for the, but you are talking about pilot study kan. So pilot study memang you kena buat. You have to do adapt ke adopt ke, you have to do pilot study, because you need to come up with the dia punya Cronbach alpha, dia punya validity. Cuma a part of validity you don't have to do. Tapi kalau adapt is similar to develop, you need to have all those. Ada satu je yang tak perlu, saya tak ingat which one. There ada a lot. Okay, there's one that you don't need if you adapt. But if you adopt, it's okay. You still need to do you still need to do pilot study to check on the confirmatory factor. Maksudnya you need to, let's say you adopt, so the questionnaire usually they have like, katalah dia ada 5 domains kan, have 5 domains. So if you adopt that questionnaire, you don't change anything. You still need to do the pilot study just to get the reliability and to make sure that all the items is measuring the same thing, okay, in your context lah. Okay, tapi kalau adapt, memang you kena buat develop lagi lah kan. So you have to remember which one you are using. You are adopting, or you are adapting, or you are developing. 3 different things.
Aida, two simple question from me, which normally the people facing with. One, sometimes when they run their pilot study, they got panic when the questionnaire, the findings are not show validity. Like below 4, or like they got 2 for their all the findings, right? So they became panic. So they usually
You're
ask,
talking about the combat alpha kan ni, combat alpha
yeah,
kan?
yeah. So jadi dia orang kata, macam mana ni semua all the factors tak valid ni kan. So a simple term, maybe there must be something wrong with the analysis, or there must be something wrong in the questionnaire, something like that,
First
right?
you need to ask, they do the reliability check tu based on the all items ke ataupun based on component. That's why you can get a very low. If you have a very low component, meaning that there are different components in your items too. Meaning that everything cannot measure the same. Cannot measure. Reliability is consistency kan. So if you have very low consistency, meaning that some of the answers people will agree. Some of the answer people will not agree. So these two you are not supposed to be in the same component to measure. So that's why the reliability will be very low. In order for you to get the higher consistency, you need to make sure that your question measuring the same thing. Okay, for example, let's say you want to measure katalah apa macam senang, okay, health kan. So apa, healthy lifestyle. So dalam healthy lifestyle, so you might talk about eating behavior, you might talk about exercise kan. These all the items are measuring the same. They are measuring healthy lifestyle, but they are not going to be consistent because eating and physical activities are not the same. So this thing can lead to very low combat alpha value. Okay, meaning that even though they are measuring, correct, physical activity is related to mental healthy lifestyle. Katalah eating behavior, good eating behavior is also lead to, but they are not the same. Okay, they are not the same. So there are a different way for you to calculate the reliability. So you have to separate it. So kalau selalunya, if you have less, what we do is we do the factor analysis. Combat alpha low, next job, do factor analysis. From the factor analysis, they will split all the items into different components. So let's say out of 30 items, so low consistency. So when you do the factor analysis, they found out that there is like 3 different cluster which it will give you different consistency. So you have to take out all this group, okay, kita panggil component. Okay, this you have to take out this component. So let's say out of the 30 question, you come up with the 3 components. Then you do the reliability test again for separate cluster tu, component. I think you have low because they do all. They take all the 43 question, buat sekali. Of course you very low, meaning that there are components in the components.
Yalah. So that's the purpose of pilot study lah, why we conduct pilot study. Alright, okay. One last question. Last. Saiful dah geram tu. Tak ada, one last question. Okay, Aida, normally for you as a lecturer or examiner or a reader of the thesis, what is the depth of analysis that you're looking for? Basic for undergrad, and then and also between master by coursework thesis and master by research thesis, the depth or detail of analysis, because sometimes there's question kan, like we are master by coursework, why do we have to do that kind of detail of analysis and so on and so forth? Sometimes it depends on the supervisor and so on. So, but you as a personal view lah for you.
Okay. So this one is my opinion lah. So my opinion might not be the same like other, mungkin other lecturer ke, mungkin might not be the same. So for me, okay, when I look into my as a panel, okay, because cannot compare to my students lah, because my students is all statistic kan. So my students bachelor statistic, master statistic. So we are expecting method from them. So when we are expecting method, of course the method can be very complex. Okay, but if look at undergrad, I think if as long as they can come up with a simple analysis, but the information that they want, they can display it and they can come up with all the information that required, then I think it should be fine. But for undergraduate, I think it's just the application. So whether you know or not how to use the tools, and then you have to come up with like lebih kepada more insight lah daripada tu. So if they use the complex method, okay, a bonus lah. For me, it's a bonus. Okay, but if they can use the simplest technique, but they come up with the outcome, a very good outcome, then for me, I think that this is acceptable. Not acceptable. It's a very good research lah. Kan? The first thing that you need to I usually consider is whether the objective is achieved or not. Okay, if the objective is achieved, is one thing, and then only I look at the method. So are they using the appropriate method or not? If they're using the appropriate method, even though it's the simplest method, then okay already, because you already achieve your objective using the appropriate method. But if you use different method, wrong method, of course wrong lah, wrong technique, that is out of question kan. So not achieving your objective also is not considered as a good research juga kan. So for me, for undergraduate, I will look into just application, if they can apply, okay, and then they can come up with all the information that is needed, okay, you can achieve your objective, okay, and then you can deliver all your analysis or your findings very good, then I think it's a good research. Tapi kalau master by research, you have to go for in-depth lah, because master by research, I think they are looking for the novelty kan. So novelty can be in terms of knowledge, it can be in terms of the method. So when it comes for novelty, something new that you have to come out, of course is high level. So kalau nak guna basic analysis, bukan kata basic analysis cannot, but if you use the basic analysis, that is what people have been done. So there's nothing new kan. So at least you have to adjust a bit lah kan. They are using mean, we are using the sum. So there is alternative kan, dia punya method. So I think depends on the level. If you go for undergraduate, simplest is the best, okay. And then for master by coursework pun, I think we still go for the application. Cuma in depth in the domain area will be deeper, again lebih more specific. Of course, research the level is a bit different. You have to involve with the method, okay, extra method sikit. But PhD lagi lah kan. But I don't know. But in your area, I think your area you are looking for which gap? The gap in the dia macam katalah real estate punya knowledge ke, ataupun you are looking into method? Is that method counted?
Normally for master by coursework lighter lah, but of course we must compare it. It must not as same as the degree level. Okay, but for PhD, normally for built environment, our faculty PhD, normally we at the end of the findings maybe develop a framework or chat framework model, something like that lah, because it's much more in depth, right? So kalau kata master by coursework maybe or master by research, maybe just a checklist, something like that lah. But kalau normally for PhD, we look into the framework model, because we want to improve the current problem or situation in the built environment area, something like that lah.
I think it's back to the domain
yeah, the field. Your field area. Okay. So thank you for today's session. Thank you very much, Puan Aida, for very knowledgeable sharing for these two series. And then thank you, Saiful. Thank you, Akrisha. Thank you all the students who attended this webinar. So the recorded will be available in my YouTube channel. Thanks again. So to Aida, Okay, Aida, I masuk dalam YouTube Okay, so untuk last kali, boleh tak kita minta siapa yang boleh on camera, kita on. Aida dia ada masalah untuk dia punya kamera. Tak apalah, kita just ambil gambar je lah so that I have a record dan kita masuk sekali dalam YouTube nanti. Alright, okay. So boleh on camera, siapa yang boleh on? Okay, alright. Kalau tak ada, kita ambil je lah gambar. Okay, Saiful. Okay, Aisyah, Akrisha, Aisyah. Erisha. Ni Akrisha you punya senior ni. Saiful pun you punya senior. Okay, welcome semua. Alright, start ambil gambar ya Saiful, nanti Saiful cakap ya. Alright. Ya, tak apa. Okay. Alright, thank you. Thank you so much Aida, Saiful, Akrisha and all the students who attended this webinar series. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, thanks. Bye. Assalamualaikum.
Salam.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Baba.
Thank you, Doctor.